Chapter 1171. The iron chains dragged on the ground, emitting a low hum that made people shudder. Under the guard's vigilance, Wei Shi and her fine gold handcuffs walked step by step into the Golden Palace. The moon-radiant sword Saint Wei Wangshu was half a step behind her brother. The brother and sister faced the gazes of the officials and walked through the long court path with calm expressions. When they came to the front of the emperor, they bowed slightly. The seven luminaries' sword saint had a high status and was comparable to a prince. He had an extremely high honor and privilege. Sun Lang stared at Wei Shihe's face, his eyes a little gloomy. Wei Shihe was originally a chess piece that he had instigated. However, when the emperor clamored for the sun-radiant sword saint to confront him in the palace, Sun Lang knew that something had happened to Hikari Kensei. As for where the problem was, it was obvious. He had been careless. However, he had clearly left a sword or a mark on Wei Shihe. When did it happen? Could it be? Sun Lang frowned slightly. It seemed that he was not the only one who wanted to take advantage of this court assembly to solve some problems. The emperor and the devil were even more radical. They had greater ambitions and had prepared for this for a long time. Perhaps the previous concessions and failures were just a kind of deceit and numbness. So, was it finally coming? The last and most difficult hurdle. The emperor's eyes flashed with coldness and pleasure. A few days ago, Sun Lang broke into the Forbidden Palace at night and kidnapped the water-radiant sword saint Shinyawa, who had just been recognized by the sacred sword. The sun-radiant sword saint chased after him. The sun-radiant sword saint was ambushed by Sun Lang. He lost his mind and went crazy. He slaughtered countless soldiers and was imprisoned in the martial arts hall's abyss prison. Not long after, Sun Lang entered the martial arts hall and had a secret meeting with the imprisoned Wei Shihe. He threatened Wei Shihe with the safety of his younger sister, Wei Wangshu, and ordered Sun Lang to distort the events of the Great Desolate Mountain in the imperial court and help the rebels. The emperor pointed at Sun Lang and said in a Sunran tone, "That's why this traitor was so smug and arrogant earlier, saying that he wanted to summon Wei Shihe to the palace to discuss matters. He thought that his plan was flawless, but he miscalculated loyalty and iron bones. He also underestimated the fortune of the imperial family. I have long known about your vicious plan." His eyes were like lightning as he looked at the silent Wei Shihe. "Sun Sword Master, tell me, is this true? You were blinded by the evil arts of the traitor and even slaughtered innocent soldiers. This is not your wish, and the crime is not your fault. As long as you expose this person on the spot, you can wash away your shame and sin and regain control of the Sun Radiant's sacred sword." Wei Shihe looked at Sun Lang with hatred. "Your Majesty, what you said is true. This traitor betrayed us in the Great Desolate Mountain and escaped after injuring the sword saint of the nation. 3 years later, he shamelessly returned to the capital to make a ruckus. He truly has an ulterior motive and conspiracy. He used evil arts to manipulate your subjects and instigated them to slander the emperor and fabricate stories. His crimes cannot be punished." The Sun Sword Saint's tone was resolute and decisive. Sun Lang, who had been watching him the whole time, shook his head and sighed. "I see another one." He looked at Wei Wangshu, who was beside Wei Shihe. "Are you the same?" Wei Wangshu's face was as cold as ice. Her moonlight-like sword intent shot out, and her killing intent was directed at Sun Lang. "There's no saving him." Sun Lang clicked his tongue and turned his eyes again. Marquis Hongshan, Marquis Guangzong, Marquis Changhua, and Marquis Qijing. These 4 martial arts hall leaders were the ones who captured Wei Shihe that day. After the incident, based on the principle of confidentiality, these 4 leaders personally handled the matter of Wei Wangshu's imprisonment. The martial arts hall was heavily guarded, and it was the most heavily guarded abyss prison. If there were no insiders, outsiders would not be able to enter. Among the 4 of them, the martial arts hall's military leaders were the military ministers in charge of both civil and military affairs. They were already at the pinnacle of the empire's power hierarchy. If such people were caught, it meant Sun Lang looked at everyone's face in the imperial court. Familiar people, unfamiliar people, friends, enemies, comrades, political opponents. The empire's most elite members were all gathered here. At this moment, these people were also looking at him. In the world since ancient times, the human heart was the most difficult to predict. Those pairs of eyes revealed all kinds of different emotions. These emotions were sometimes not the truest reflection of the human heart. Perhaps they were hiding the deepest disguise. Hostility was definitely hostility, but kindness was not necessarily kindness. This was because one did not know if the true owner of those eyes was still a human. This was a little troublesome. The situation was a little tricky. This time, the emperor and the devil were more prepared. They must have deduced all kinds of situations in advance, and their preparations were almost foolproof. Therefore, the way to break out of this situation was to change the variables. Sun Lang muttered in his heart. Someone from the civil class jumped out, pointed at Sun Lang, and shouted, "Sun Lang, what do you have to say about what His Majesty and the Sun Sword Saint said?" Sun Lang smiled faintly. "You are all people with brains. If I was a traitor with bad intentions, why didn't the Emperor directly announce to the world to attack me? On the contrary, I've been a coward for so long. Even I feel ashamed just looking at you. Think about it carefully." That person said coldly, "Don't pester endlessly. If you have any evidence to defend yourself, please say it. Say it. Would you believe it? You people won't cry until you see the coffin." Sun Lang looked around as he said, "But I like to see people kneel in front of coffins and cry. I like to see people turn back after hitting a wall. I like to see you regret your past. I like to say things that are not foreseen. Today, I will tell you." He pointed at Wei Shiha. This person is no longer the Sun Sword Saint Wei Shiha. Although his body remains the same, there is an invisible spirit that has swallowed Wei Shiha's soul and replaced him. Silently, this person with Wei Shiha's body has become another person. The spirit that took over his body came from the weapon that he lived with day and night, his Sun Sword. Bai Yue, who was crazy for 3 years and died inexplicably, was also suffering from the spirit of the sword. He resisted for 3 years and was free before he died. This is his final ending. The Emperor is right about one thing. The Hotu sacred sword is indeed the origin template of all the imperial army. The reason why the Empire can create the imperial army through it is that the Hotu sacred sword was a weapon that was seized from the ancestor of the origin sky demon during the First Great War of Tianyuan. In other words, the imperial army that the Empire relies on to strengthen itself is derived from the technology of the extraterritorial sky demon. The powerful imperial army that you are proud of is created by the spirit of the extraterritorial sky demon. He showed his snow-white teeth. Sunran laughed and said, "Think about it. The weapon you use was made by the blacksmith who has a feud with your family. After knowing this, would you still dare to use it to fight with your opponent?" Someone else shouted, "You know the secret of the Hotu sacred sword, and you are still pretending to be crazy just now." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "That was then and this is now, but this is not the point. I have never known how to tell you the secret of the spirit of possession, because it is too ridiculous and cannot be trusted. Moreover, it will also alert the Emperor and the others. But now, these concerns are meaningless. As subjects of the Emperor, at least I can tell you and let you hear it. Even if you die, you could be ghosts who know the truth, right?" He chuckled and said, "Be careful. The Imperial army in your hands may have a terrifying spirit that will take over your body. If I were you, I would throw the Imperial army in my hands far away." Sun Lang's words were frivolous and his tone casual, as if he was joking. However, it was this attitude that was most likely to arouse the suspicions in people's hearts. I have spoken for so long. Your Majesty, are you not going to say anything to stop me?" After Sun Lang finished speaking, he immediately put on a look of surprise and looked at the high and mighty Emperor. "Could it be that your Majesty thinks that victory is in your hands and that these subjects will soon become your slaves? So you are being merciful and letting them die with understanding?" "I am laughing at your final struggle," the Emperor said. "Do you think that you can move the subjects present by making up such a ridiculous statement when you are at death's door? However, your words are very familiar. Your original name is Jiang. Why did you change your name to Sun Lang? Why did you disappear for 2 to 3 years and hide there? You slaughtered the black armored army in Mingzhou. Someone saw you use the secret technique of the Sky Demon. In the great desolate mountains, you even brazenly attacked your allies. Sun Lang, I think you're the real Sky Demon. Sun Lang shrugged and said, Huh? You have nothing to say? The Emperor said gloomily, Do you want to know why I allow you to speak nonsense? Because I'm also waiting. It is not only Hikari Kensei who can accuse you of evil deeds. There is also the water-radiant sword Saint Shen Yaohua, who was kidnapped by you. Your henchmen are in cahoots with you. General Zhao Yunlong of Songzhou, former imperial physician Lu Shujin, and the young lady of Marquis Jing'an's household and the Zhang family in Mingzhou. They're all traitors, all of them. Must die. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone felt something in their hearts at the same time. Somewhere outside the imperial city, a beam of sword aura suddenly rose up. It was brilliant and vast, as if it was the origin of all things. Sun Lang's expression suddenly changed. The devil ancestor Yuan. He dared to put the emperor in danger and sneak attacked Shinto province. No, perhaps he did not care about the emperor's life or death at all. The most important thing was Shinto province. In Luo, Ms. Zhao, Annie Lu, they were all there. Although Sun Lang claimed that these girls were the source of his strong spiritual strength, objectively speaking, these people were also his biggest weakness, as well as the valve of his rationality. Li Guangyuan got what he wanted to see from Sun Lang's eyes that seemed to always be calm. Panic, anger, fury, madness, bloodlust. So he could also be angry, he could also be afraid, he could also lose his rationality. Threads of thick blood and killing intent constantly gushed out from the body that had been suppressed for nearly 3 years. Under the emperor's gaze, Sun Lang raised his head and gave him a slight smile. Your Majesty, he said, watch carefully. Then Sun Lang's figure moved. From extreme stillness to extreme movement, killing intent and moves came out together. It was the world's peerless martial arts and power. The edge of the sword was not pointed at the emperor, but at Empress Tensei. This was far beyond everyone's expectations. So much so that the ministers who had been on guard for a long time missed. A hand that could break all the secret techniques in the world, use all the strange weapons in the world, and capture everything in the world was pressed on Empress Tensei's shoulder. The index finger of the other hand was pressed against Empress Tensei's slender neck. General Tensei was a proud daughter of God, a general of the royal family, and the most talented and accomplished person in this generation of the royal family. People once thought that she might be able to compete for the throne, but at this moment, no one doubted that as long as Sun Lang moved his finger, His Highness Empress would die on the spot. Even the King of Hell could not save her. After a short period of shock, the ministers shouted in shock and anger and surrounded Sun Lang in the center. The members of Tensei province all roared and were about to go up and fight. However, the one who lost his composure the most was the emperor, who had always been wise and lofty. He opened his eyes wide and roared, "Let her go." He actually jumped up and pounced on Sun Lang. Sun Lang smiled faintly. He said in Empress's ear, "Look at your father, how much he loves you." At this time, Empress, who was also surprised, only had a dizzy thought in her head. Now, why am I fine this time? Hearing Sun Lang's whisper, she raised her head subconsciously and saw the emperor who had lost his composure. She saw him pouncing over, saw his angry mouth, saw his bloodshot eyes, and saw his anxious look. He looked like a father worried about his daughter. But this was not the case. Empress did not see a trace of affection in the emperor's eyes. There was only worry, anger, and fear. It was the pure fear of loss. Why was this? Before she could think of an answer, she felt a strong force coming from her shoulder. She staggered back and almost fell. Then she saw Sun Lang step forward, rush through the crowd, and rise into the air to meet the emperor who was pouncing down. This was the first time since the founding of the Hutta Kingdom that someone had attacked the emperor in this supreme golden palace. And this Kingslayer was the most powerful creature in the world. The result seemed obvious. The ministers missed another step. They just did not expect that Sun Lang would attack Empress. and now they did not expect that the emperor would take the initiative to jump off the royal stairs engraved with the imperial army's array. Seeing that the emperor was about to bleed on the spot, everyone let out meaningless shouts. Even 10 emperors together could not block Sun Lang's sky-piercing attack. But it was blocked. With a loud boom, an invisible wave of chi suddenly surged. A large number of tiles on the roof of the Golden Palace were blown away, and the large Golden Palace exploded. Those with low cultivation were directly thrown out, and the experts who had steadied themselves looked in disbelief at the center of the confrontation. The emperor had blocked Sun Lang's attack. In the hands of the ruler of the world was the empire's most important weapon, the Hutu sacred sword. Although there was a small interlude, everything seemed to be progressing according to the plan. In front of Sun Lang, the emperor held the sword of suppressing star. In the spiritual world, Li Guanyuan's face merged with the devil's, and he gave him a gloating smile. The devil had not left. He was residing in the emperor's body, waiting for an opportunity. The Hutu spiritual energy in Shinto province was not the work of the devil, but a trap. During the court assembly, through a series of fierce attacks and hints, Sun Lang was gradually led into the wrong line of thought, causing him to expend a great deal of mental energy. Hidden in the layers of foreshadowing and strategy was the true goal, which was to use Sun Lang's concern for Zhang Yinluo and the others to make him flip the table and fight without hesitation. The emperor could not block Sun Lang's attack, but the devil could. If it was just one attack, it was completely possible. And then Sun Lang, who had taken the initiative to attack the emperor, was undoubtedly a traitor that the world attacked. Chapter 1172. It was earth-shattering. The aftermath of the clash between Sun Lang and the emperor had yet to disperse. Sunlight shone through the broken eaves and swept into the palace. Smoke and dust rose, but it was immediately dispersed by the imperial army controlled by the ministers, revealing the current situation. On the high steps, Sun Lang and the emperor stood facing each other. In the emperor's hand was the divine weapon of the Hutu kingdom, the Earth Glory sacred sword. The many internal sword guards responsible for protecting the emperor had already fallen to the ground, their status unknown. Their martial arts were not very high, and they were at the center of the clash, so they could not withstand the fierce astral wind. The fallen dragon throne, the broken table, the half-destroyed roof, and the mess on the ground. All of this pointed to one thing. Just a moment ago, in front of all the ministers, an attempt to kill the emperor had taken place. At this moment, all the secrets and all the truth seemed to have become meaningless. No matter what, attacking the emperor was already an unforgivable act of treason. The ministers did not have time to be shocked that the emperor had obtained the recognition of the Earth Glory sacred sword. They had to stop Sun Lang from assassinating the emperor, because order was order. The emperor was the master of the world and was supported and respected by everyone. Supporting the emperor was protecting one's own power and status. This was the highest standard of conduct. Sun Lang stopped. Furious shouts rang out one after another, and with a blazing light, the imperial army turned from illusory to real. Dozens of strangely shaped weapons exuding a cold light soared into the air, crossing paths in the air and aiming at Sun Lang from all directions. The moon sword flashed, and the moon sword was unsheathed. Wei Wangshu raised the moon glory sacred sword and slashed at Wei Shiha. The sword light spun and stirred up a series of soft noises. The golden chains wrapped around Wei Shiha's body, cracked inch by inch, and fell to the ground. The sun glory sacred sword emerged from the flames and fell into the hands of its owner. His eyes blazed with the light of the sun as he stood side by side with his sister. The radiance of the sun and the moon danced, and the sword chi driven by killing intent stirred up a fierce wind. The sun-moon sword sage and dozens of imperial army experts, although most of the ministers were still watching, their attitude was no longer neutral. They looked around and saw enemies everywhere. It was like the old days were repeating themselves. Traitor, traitor! Amidst the chaos, Prince Chengcheng's jade crown fell off and his face was covered in dust. He staggered to the side of the Minister of War, pointed at Sun Lang and shouted, "You bastard! You failed to live up to father's trust. How dare you do such a disgraceful thing? Ministers and elders, please kill this monster for imperial father." Sun Lang sneered and glanced at Li Jiansheng. In a split second, the crown prince felt as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. It was as if his soul had been frozen. Then, he heard Sun Lang say calmly, "Don't be anxious. The more the merrier." Li Jiansheng was so frightened that he immediately retreated. His lips trembled, and he couldn't even utter a single curse. This generation's crown prince really isn't good enough. Sun Lang turned his head and looked down at the ministers from the top of the jade steps. His eyes were clear, and there was no fear on his face. He looked from the first grade to the 9th grade, from the experts to the ants, and from the enemies to his comrades. Even though he was in such a disadvantageous situation, he didn't show any fear. Just this courage alone was enough to make the ministers secretly admire him. In fact, to be honest, most of them didn't have any bad feelings towards Sun Lang. On the contrary, they praised him for his outstanding achievements in the Great War of Tianyuan. On the contrary, they envied him for his freedom and unbridled disregard for any restrictions and doing whatever he wanted. As for the accusation of being possessed by the sky demon and the blame for destroying the Imperial Army's production line, these were all too far away. Moreover, there was no real feeling or evidence, so they didn't have any bad feelings toward him in the moment. They looked at this rare talent with complicated feelings. Perhaps in the next moment, this glorious golden palace would flow with rivers of blood. This ancient and glorious empire, this sacred and noble court assembly, was about to become a battlefield full of death and blood. Who could have expected such a thing? After a moment of silence, the Minister of War took a step forward and said in a deep voice, "Sun Lang, assassinating the emperor in front of the palace is a crime that cannot be punished by death. No matter how great the grievances and the inside story are, there's no way to state them. You have already lost. Take your own life to avoid humiliation and preserve your last bit of dignity. This old man can protect your former subordinates and family on your behalf. My colleagues are my witnesses. If I go back on my words, let me die under the sword and suffer the pain of reincarnation forever." Sun Lang didn't answer. His eyes swept across the faces of the ministers. Among these big shots of the empire, some were brothers with him, some were comrades with him, and some had placed heavy bets on him after he returned to the capital. However, at this moment, everyone sighed as if they couldn't bear to see him die. It was as if they already knew his ending. He laughed. The Minister of War frowned and said, "You don't trust me? Since I've said it, I can't go back on my words. If you can't protect your former subordinates and family, I'll pay with my life. If you think I'm not strong enough, my colleagues in the Imperial Court are all here. As long as you say the word, everyone is willing to protect your family's wealth, and no one could touch them." Sun Lang laughed even louder. He laughed out of breath, and even laughed a little hysterically. He even laughed until tears came out of his eyes. He laughed very crazily. "Of course I trust you, Olgua. I know that if I promise you, you will really protect my friends and family with your life. Of course I believe your promise. I believe that all of you keep your promises. I believe that all of you are not simple politicians. I believe that in the Tianyuan generation, many people bravely step forward and rush to the battlefield for their beliefs instead of wealth. I believe that compared to official positions and power, you care more about the strength and stability of this country." Sun Lang looked at each of them. There was a trace of tears in his smile. "But all of you," he asked, "who can trust me?" Everyone was shocked in their hearts. For some reason, this simple question tugged at their heartstrings. Even they didn't know why. Trust. Just trust. They trusted Jiang, who had fought side by side with them. They trusted this hero of the Tianyuan generation who had made great military exploits. They trusted him, who was fearless of death. They trusted him, who had made great military exploits. They trusted him, who was indomitable. But trust was never a luxury. It was especially true for people in high positions. They were burdened by power, status, and wealth. The more they had, the less trust they had left. These smartest and noblest people of the empire would rather believe that the battle on the great desolate mountain was an unspeakable game of trickery than face up to the dangers and conspiracies hidden under the fog. They could watch the emperor and Sun Lang fight fiercely from the other side of the river, but they wouldn't delve into the mysteries and reasons behind it. They only knew how to make bets and choose sides, but they never asked whether it was right or wrong. They never cared about right or wrong. They thought that only children cared about right or wrong. Mature adults only cared about gains and losses. They thought that the world had always been like this. They thought that everything in the world could be traded and compromised. Obviously, they would have to pay the price eventually. Bullsh *T. A roar suddenly burst out. Among the civil and military officials, Zhua, Pengji, Yin Song, Su Dingfang, and the others suddenly attacked. The wind generated by their palms was extremely sharp, and their intention was to force the enemy rather than injure them. The surrounding officials were all shocked and subconsciously flew back to avoid the attack. They saw that the generals under Jia Ying's command in the northern war zone had formed a circular formation and entrusted their backs to their comrades. Android shouted, "I was waiting for your signal. What the F***ck are you talking about?" The Minister of War was shocked. He roared angrily. "Do you think that the mess is not big enough? Are you rebelling with Sun Lang, too? You don't care about your wealth and your lives anymore?" Android laughed and said, "F***ck you old man Gua. Others don't know what happened in the Great Barren Mountain, but as the Minister of War, don't you know anything? In the past, I didn't see you cry out for Commander Zhan to be wronged. Now, you're impatiently trying to pin a crime on him. You've lived for so long, but you can't even tell right from wrong. No wonder your military discipline is the worst. I'm a warrior, but I'm talking to you." Pongji knew that this wasn't the time to bicker, so he shouted, "Marshal, what should we do?" "Brothers, thank you for your trust. I won't forget what you've done for me today." Sun Lang's eyes flashed. He took a deep breath and said in a deep voice, "Don't do anything for now. Get into formation and protect yourselves. Watch me defeat the enemy." "How arrogant!" The emperor sneered. "Rebels, gather together, and we can defeat them all. My beloved subjects, help me arrest these traitors. Your Majesty, please wait." Bao Shiren strode out amidst the commotion. He stood in the middle of the road and bowed proudly. He said loudly, "Governor Bao Shiren, may I ask your Majesty why the Hutu sacred sword is in your Majesty's hands? When did Hikari Kensei tell your Majesty the inside story? Is the Wood Radiance sword saint alive or dead? Why did the Gold Radiance sword saint die?" His eyes were like lightning as he stared straight at the emperor. His words were like knives as he said, "I'll ask your Majesty again. Did the imperial soldiers kill Sun Lang in the Great Barren Mountain under a secret order? If so, please tell me the reason." The emperor didn't expect Bao Shiren to appear at this time. He said in a Sun-Ran tone, "It's a long story. We'll talk about it later. Right now, it's important to capture the traitor." Bao Shiren said loudly, "There are many officials in the Golden Palace. Sun Lang can't escape. He's an important official of the country, a general of heaven's origin. He has made great military achievements and was promoted to the position of general. How can he be accused of being a traitor so easily? This is an important matter of the country. Your Majesty, you can't play around. Please enlighten me on my doubts. If Sun Lang is really scheming and sinister, I'm willing to be the vanguard and take his head. Otherwise," the emperor said furiously, "Otherwise what?" Bao Shiren didn't back down. He shouted back at the same volume, "I want to preserve the dignity of the emperor. I can't say this directly. Your Majesty, you know it." Li Guangyuan was furious. "Bao Shiren, you don't want to live anymore? This is a crime of disrespect. For the sake of Marquis Wu, quickly retreat, so as not to implicate the sect." Bao Shiren said decisively, "Your Majesty, you don't need to worry. When this subject entered the sect, I first learned about the right and wrong of a person's character. 2 years ago, I was unable to clear Jia Ying's name. Today, I still have to sit by and watch this unknown betrayal. What kind of person am I? If I don't overturn this matter today, I'll die with Sun Lang. Even if my teacher knows, he should praise and approve of what I've done today. The emperor trembled with anger. Good, good, good. Let me see. Who else? Why don't you stand up together? Who else doesn't know death and wants to go to hell with this traitor? Me too. Chapter 1173. The situation had reversed in the court session in the Golden Palace. The emperor had turned the tables, and Sun Lang was fighting like a cornered beast. Anyone with eyes could see that General Shunsei was at an absolute moral disadvantage. No matter what the reason was, assassinating the emperor in front of the palace was already an unforgivable act of rebellion. In front of everyone, it could not be denied. It could be said that in this political battle, Sun Lang had already lost. In this situation, the disciple of Marquis Wu, the governor of the capital, Bao Shiren, was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot, blocking the advance of the emperor. He clearly stood on Sun Lang's side and sternly questioned the emperor's actions. Facing death unflinchingly, sacrificing one's life for righteousness. These were the characteristics of a hero. It was because the majority of ordinary people could not do this that people respected heroes and righteous people. Bao Shiren's question was precisely the part that everyone had been suspicious of but didn't dare to delve into in the past 2 years. It was like the emperor's new clothes. Even a young child could see it clearly, but the wise adults didn't say a word. But there were always people who dared to speak. There were always very few heroes, the first to resist, the first to face the enemy alone, the one who bravely advanced. And the reason a hero was because he would use his back, his actions, and even his life to show hope and courage to those who were not so brave. He would use more intense actions and more precious sacrifices to awaken the silent majority, to remind them of the need to fight, to let them see the true face of the enemy. And so Bao Shiren stood out, unexpected, but within reason, because he had always been like this, always speaking out for justice, always remaining unyielding. He was famous in the capital for not being sensible and not following the Tao. He did not give anyone face and did not submit to any worldly wisdom or rules. From the civil and military officials to the nobles and officials, everyone saw him as a thorn in their side, a thorn in their flesh. But even so, even if the majority did not like him, believing him to be inflexible, pretentious, idiotic, and pedantic, even the group of people who disliked him the most could not help but express a certain degree of respect. It was reverence. They all believed that Bao Shiren was an extraordinary person. They all felt that there should be people like Bao Shiren in this world. It was exactly because Master Bao had always been an unblemished and infallible benchmark that his declaration could awaken the silent people to the greatest extent. He questioned the emperor with the sharpest words, reminding people of the enormous secrets and suspicions hidden under the emperor's schemes. He supported Sun Lang in the most decisive manner, reminding people of the glorious achievements and illustrious contributions of the most meritorious minister of the Heavens Origin sector. This trial was definitely not just. Everyone had to think about it seriously. The officials were first surprised by Bao Shiren's choice and courage, and then they felt ashamed of their own inferiority. They asked themselves honestly, they were only acquaintances with Sun Lang by chance, and they absolutely did not have the courage to stand out and speak out for justice in such a desperate situation. Then he began to think, waver, doubt, and hesitate. If he could make the majority of the neutral faction in the imperial court waver and hesitate, and temporarily remain neutral, it would greatly increase Sun Lang's chances of winning. This was something that the prestigious Sun Lang couldn't do. The Minister of War, who had disciples all over the world, couldn't do. The martial arts hall's big shots with high authority couldn't do either. They might have great strength, great prestige, and great authority, but they couldn't change the thoughts of so many courtiers. Only Bao Shiren could do this. In this world, there was a power that was stronger than authority and violence. If Bao Shiren's attitude temporarily prevented the situation from deteriorating to a certain extent, Then the next person's speech caused the already chaotic situation to boil over. Me too. In the face of the emperor's murderous yell, someone stood out. It was like a huge rock smashed into a calm lake. Everyone exclaimed. Li Jianqing's expression changed from bewilderment to ecstasy. He yelled, "You disobedient son! You disobeyed the laws of man. You disobeyed your father. I will not forgive you." "Shut up." Empress Tensei's eyes turned sharp, and her murderous intent surged out. How could Prince Cheng, who pretended to be stupid in the past, be compared to her? She said coldly, "Are you worthy to be a descendant of the Li family?" In the Tensei province's camp, Yuan Shiji yelled anxiously, "Your Highness, be careful with your words and actions." Zhang Sun Wuji scolded, "Sun Lang, what sorcery did you use on Her Highness?" The royalist faction and the remaining officials of the Heavenly Policy residence all spoke out to stop her. Even Sun Lang's lackeys looked at each other with strange expressions. They all felt that the Emperor's concubine had probably gone mad, or perhaps she had rekindled her old feelings and was momentarily possessed. She actually wanted to commit suicide with Sun Lang and become a pair of mandarin ducks that shared the same fate. Enduring all kinds of gazes that were similar to Sun Lang's, the Emperor's concubine looked around. Some were anxious, some were angry, some were mocking, some were disappointed, and some were taking joy in her misfortune. She smiled, and there were some sighs in her smile. "None of you trust Sun Lang," she said. "None of you understand me." After saying this, Empress looked at Sun Lang and said lightly, "Do you understand?" "Unfortunately, I understand." Sun Lang shrugged. "What's more regrettable is that you also trust me." Empress snorted. "The most regrettable thing is that we actually have the same goal this time. You know how to talk." Sun Lang nodded. "Indeed, we just have the same goal. I don't know what you're talking about." "But very good, very good." Emperor Sun Ran sneered, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Empress's betrayal in front of the palace didn't make him feel angry at all. He only felt happy and happy. He was worried that he had no reason to attack Empress. "You are really my good daughter. You are so hesitant and capricious. Only women and villains are difficult to raise. The sages didn't lie to me." He said gloomily, "Today all of you showed up one by one. It is a good thing. You are the parasites of the empire and the hindrances of the country. I want to kill all of you spies first. Then I will clean up the disloyal officials, establish the world, and establish the unparalleled meritorious hegemony." Speaking of this, he looked up to the sky and roared. The fierce wind blew around him, the dark dust surged, and the gravel flew. The Emperor's face was extremely distorted, as if he was the reincarnation of the Demon King. "My colleagues, please." The Emperor held the Hutu divine sword in his hand. His power was extraordinary, and his breath was horrible. However, Sun Lang suppressed him, so the Emperor's force was not a threat. In this game, if they wanted to turn the tables and win, the key was to win the support of more ministers. At least, they had to keep them neutral. Empress and Sun Lang had worked together for many years. Their thoughts and hearts were in sync. She turned straight and shouted to the ministers, "We have worked together in the court for more than 10 years. You should know that I am loyal and brave. Today, I don't care about personal grudges and only care about the public interest. Therefore, I stand with Sun Lang. Although it is a bad idea, I can't do anything about it, because the Emperor has gone crazy. He is no longer wise, benevolent, or magnanimous. Instead, he has become a gloomy, selfish, and malicious schemer. What you see is just his disguise. In fact, he has been scheming in the dark all these years. He has been deceiving the world. I know all of it." As soon as these words came out, everyone was in an uproar. These words were vague, but in fact, it was equivalent to exposing herself, because everyone knew that Empress was the Emperor's white glove. Her accusation was tantamount to admitting her guilt. Even the Emperor did not expect that Empress would be so resolute and at all costs. Did this bitch already find out? No, it was impossible. Li Guanyuan was shocked and angry. Over the years, he had been obsessed with the dream of immortality. His mind had gradually become distorted, and he had become suspicious, sensitive, cruel, and indifferent. However, he did not realize that the biggest negative impact this matter had on him was that he gradually forgot the bright side of human nature. In his world, there was only deception, interest, and suspicion. He had no humanity. Naturally, he did not believe that others had humanity, just like he did not expect that Bao Shiren still had the courage to stand up in such a desperate situation. Just like he did not understand why Empress Tensei suddenly rebelled. Just like he did not understand why Empress and Bao Shiren only said a few words. Many ministers began to waver. He said coldly, "Bitch, you did most of those things." Empress looked up at her father, whom she had once respected and revered, and felt that it was a long time ago. She even did not know why she had obeyed the mortal who was gradually going crazy. She said, "I used to think that those were necessary evils, but I was wrong. Everything was not for the betterment of this country, but to satisfy your unspeakable purpose. Father, this is the last time I call you father. Right now, you are chilling and like a monster. The emperor should not be a lunatic. Right now, you will only lead the country into the abyss. I can't be more certain of that." Empress's eyes were full of unshakable awe. She said resolutely, "In order to bring down Sun Lang, you did not hesitate to disclose the top secret, that the Imperium had lost the ability to create an imperial army. Do you know that it means long-term turmoil and even more? Do you know that the peace that the soldiers of the heavens' origin fought so hard for will no longer exist? From the moment you said those words, you don't deserve to be the emperor. You don't deserve to be my king." She raised her voice and waved her arms. "Ministers, is such a king worthy of your loyalty?" The most vicious thing was to strike at the heart. The power of the emperor and the power of ministers, just like the power of husband and wife, must be completely suppressed by one side. That was the most basic demand. The ministers were always inclined to replace the emperor with a gentle and almost cowardly one, because it was the most in line with their fundamental interests. Even if they knew that a tough and decisive emperor was actually more in line with the interests of the country. So, more people began to waver. Bao Shiren's statement aroused their suspicion and uneasiness. Empress's testimony also proved it. Unknowingly, the core of the conflict had gradually changed. Sun Lang was struggling out of the disadvantage of assassinating the emperor step by step, because the focus of the problem seemed to be different, and the emperor was keenly aware of it. So he was very angry, because he did not understand why it had become like this again. He had clearly laid out a meticulous plan. He had successfully lured Sun Lang into the trap. Why did it have to be like this? The emperor's eyes gradually became cold and gloomy. The anger in his heart continued to rise. His hand holding the sword trembled slightly. He did not know when it started, but he became more and more irritable. At first, it was just anger that was difficult to control, but now it was even more unbearable. It seemed that all his negative emotions were infinitely magnified since he held the Hoodoo holy sword. Reason and caution were further compressed. Only great ambition and great anger devoured everything. Li Guangyuan's uneasiness and restlessness had risen to the extreme. In a sea of consciousness, there was a black shadow that was constantly trembling. It whispered like an evil spirit and talked with Li Guangyuan's soul. "Don't worry, don't worry. The plan was perfect. We have already arranged everything." However, their thoughts and attitudes had changed. Why should I pay attention to the thoughts of ants? Soon, their lives will no longer belong to me. From then on, there will be no more voices of doubt and opposition. Only your will, the only will. Yes, you're right. Soon, all of them will belong to me. And Sun Lang will belong to you. Yes, wait a little longer. Wait a little longer. The messenger of good news has arrived. Hearing this, Li Guangyuan showed a happy smile. His smile was twisted like an evil spirit's. Sun Lang saw that Empress had already begun to change the public opinion. He was about to cooperate further, but his mind moved and his expression became gloomy. He turned his head. Outside the hall, a white robe was standing. Someone stepped over the high threshold and walked into the sacred hall. An illusory mist followed. It was the sword saint of water, Shun Yaohua. Chapter 1174. Rewind time a little. The imperial court was about to have showdown. In the direction of Shinto province, there was a fierce sword aura. Sun Lang was too concerned and misjudged the situation. He thought that the devil Yuan Zhu was attacking Yin Luo and the others, so he brazenly attacked the emperor and fell into the trap of Li Guangyuan and the devil. He fell into the passive situation of assassinating the emperor. In fact, the devil had been guarding the emperor and did not leave the Golden Palace. The person who shot out the deep and condensed earth sword aura that could bear all things was Shun Yaohua. When a violent explosion sounded, Zhao Yunlong and Lu Shujin immediately reacted. In the backyard of Shinto province, there was a blazing light that rose into the sky. Two figures stood at the two corners at a very fast speed. Zhao Yunlong was holding an ordinary spear, and Lu Shujin was simply empty-handed. It seemed a little arrogant, but Chao Patao was the king of Heavenly Origin Strike, and Lu Shujin had a part of the power of the Demon Sword Keidu. Even if they did not use the Imperial Army, they were strong enough to be a strong enemy. Moreover, there was also a seraph that rose into the sky. The Death Messenger angrily spread its steel wings in the sky of the Imperial capital, and all the weapon modules were unfolded, firmly locking on the figures above the ruins. With the attacks of these three experts, even the seven luminaries sword sage had to think carefully. The smoke and dust rising from the ruins suddenly dissipated. Shun Yaohua, dressed in snow-white clothes, stood quietly in the ruins of the collapsed house. Her spotless beauty was in sharp contrast to the mess around her. The dreamy aqua-blue sacred sword that was emitting piercingly cold water vapor was held in her right hand, and on her slender left palm, a bright yellow glow was gradually dissipating. Even though only a tail was left, the power contained in the glow made the experts present feel inwardly shocked. Princess Pingyang filled the last empty spot. The three of them formed a triangle and surrounded Shun Yaohua. The princess looked at the light spots floating in Shun Yaohua's hand, and her body trembled slightly. She cried out, "This is the Earth's holy power! No wonder you were able to break free from master shackles." Zhao Yunlong pointed her steel spear at Shun Yaohua. Her murderous aura locked onto Shun Yaohua's position. She shouted in a deep voice, "Don't talk nonsense with her." She took advantage of the court assembly to break out of the encirclement. There must be changes in the court. She must have a motive for taking advantage of the chaos. Since that's the case, let's kill her first. Lu Shujin and Princess Pingyang did not respond, but their murderous aura quietly stirred up an invisible breeze. The air was filled with a piercing chill. They were both people who knew the severity of the situation. They would not hesitate or talk nonsense. If there were changes in the court assembly, then the people in Shinto province would be Sun Lang's weakest spot. Under such circumstances, Shun Yaohua could not be allowed to run amok here. No matter whose mistress she was, no matter how guilty Sun Lang felt towards her, they could only kill her first. Zhao Yunlong did not decline and immediately wanted to attack, but Shun Yaohua shook her head slightly. "General Zhao, you misunderstood. I have no intention of fighting with you. Please step aside." Chao Patao's son Ran said, "You can't go anywhere." The wife frowned and sighed softly. "You misunderstood again." The sword light that flowed like water suddenly rose. Water was the most unpredictable power. It could be like wind and rain, silently moistening things, but it could also roar and soar, destroying everything. The water light suddenly expanded, and then turned into a tsunami that could split the earth and collapse the sky. Wave after wave, it slammed toward Zhao Yunlong. Zhao Yunlong shook his long spear, and the spear swung out 7 times. Immediately, like a dragon exploring the sea, he pierced the sky to meet the tsunami that could change the color of the sky and earth. Princess Pingyang quietly attacked Shun Yaohua's back. Her palm was like a sword, and the sword was as vast and heavy as the earth. It was a unique skill from the Hutu Sword Palace. Lu Shujin had the least combat experience. She wandered to the outside, and the demon power of Keitu transformed into a misty purple mist, interweaving a net and enveloping all directions. Courier controlled the blazing angel, raised the two cannons in the air, and aimed for a while. Immediately, he scolded, "That's why I hate the warriors of the Empire the most." With a muffled sound, Zhao Yunlong floated back, and the steel spear in his hand was immediately broken. Shen Yaohua's ocean-tide sword was also blocked. The wife immediately returned her palm to meet with Princess Pingyang's fist and palm. Using slow to fight fast, using light to lift heavy, using softness to overcome hardness, both of their skills were equally matched. However, Shen Yaohua controlled the sharpness of the sacred sword, which was a huge advantage that was difficult to catch up with. After a few rounds, Princess Pingyang had no choice but to retreat. Shen Yaohua drew her sword in the air, and where the sharp point pointed, a hole was opened in the heavenly purple mist net. Water is good at defense and can suppress fire. My friend in the sky, I advise you to be careful. Before you break through my sword defense, the entire Shinto province will be destroyed by you. Shen Yaohua repelled the siege of the three people and looked up at the blazing angel in the sky. There was no trace of virtue on her face, let alone arrogance, as if she had just done a trivial thing. She nodded to Zhao Yunlong and said, "Thank you for letting me win, General Zhao." If you had used the Imperial Army's edge spear instead of an ordinary long spear, the outcome of that move just now would have been difficult to predict. Speaking of this, a strange light flashed in her eyes, so please forgive me for asking, why didn't the general use the Imperial Army? 3 steel spears were thrown down from the sky. Zhao Yunlong directly picked up 2 of them and spun them twice in his hands. He said coldly, "It's none of your business. If you want to fight, then fight." Shen Yaohua said softly, "I have no intention of fighting with you. Please make way. Instead of wasting your energy and internal chi on fighting with me, you might as well think about your next plan. The imperial capital is about to undergo a great change. Even if you have deep confidence in Sun Lang, you don't want to be his burden, right?" Zhao Yunlong was silent for a moment, and then said, "What are you going to do?" Shen Yaohua shook her head and didn't say anything. "If possible, it's better for you all to leave the imperial capital for the time being." After saying this, she floated away, as if she was sure that Zhao Yunlong and the others wouldn't chase after her. Indeed, the women didn't make a move. Their expressions were somewhat grave. After a while, Zhang Yinluo, Zhao Feihuang, and Su Qingwan also came here. Looking at the ruins, worry flashed in their eyes. Sure enough, it was right to send those little girls to Songzhou. Zhao Yunlong said in a deep voice, "There are 2 blazing angels. One is piloted by Courier, and the other by Zhang Yinluo. Although the cockpit is designed for a single person, it's more than enough to stuff another woman inside. With the enormous firepower of the blazing angels, it's enough to shake the strongest imperial army formation. Lu Shujin, Princess Pingyang, and I will form a triangular formation to break out of the encirclement on land. It won't be difficult for the 7 of us to kill our way out of the imperial capital." She looked around at everyone. "Are we leaving?" However, the people from Zhongfu and Marquis Jing and Fu would have to stay here. But it wasn't a big deal. They were just insignificant characters. It was actually safer for them to stay here. Even if the situation in the imperial court changed, the emperor and the others wouldn't vent their anger on these people. As long as Sun Lang was fine, as long as they were fine. Zhao Feihuang shook his head and said, "The situation isn't clear. We don't need to rush to leave." Zhang Yinluo also said, "If something really happens to the court assembly, we can also stay and see if we can help. We can't let Sun Lang fight alone." Zhao Yunlong said in a stiff tone, "You guys staying alive is the greatest help. This is my mission. If we retreat first, he won't have any misgivings. Whether he fights or runs, he could do as he pleases." Zhang Yinluo calmly looked into Zhao Yunlong's eyes and said, "Of course he can choose to fight or run. But no matter if he turns the imperial palace into ruins or if he kills the emperor and runs away, he and we will lose our peaceful lives. This is losing. My goal in staying is to help him win." Zhao Yunlong tried his best not to show too much disdain. "With just you?" Zhang Inluo calmly said. How will we know if we don't try? She added, I know that compared to you guys, my martial arts can only be considered weak. But when I was studying abroad in Lihua, I learned some special combat skills. Perhaps they will be of use in unexpected ways. I know you care about our safety the most. Then I can promise you that the Blazing Angel's maximum carrying capacity is far beyond your imagination. Let alone one person. Even if I take all of you, I can charge in the sky at an extremely fast speed and leave the battlefield. I only need to abandon a few combat modules. Zhao Yunlong said coldly. The Imperial capital's defensive array map, the Imperial army with the ability to guide arrows into the sky, and even the Sharp Vanguard Battalion. These are not just for show. But the Blazing Angel is also not for show. And you guys are also not for show? Inluo said with a smile. Sun Lang is also not for show, is he? At the very least, you should have confidence in him. Zhao Yunlong was silent for a moment, then said, In principle, I agree with your suggestion, but I can still stop your actions at any time. You guys also have to work hard to show your value and make me believe that the benefits of staying here are far greater than the benefits of leaving now. Understand? Zhang Yinluo smiled. Don't worry. Your courage is commendable. Zhao Yunlong said indifferently. You're not bad. By the way, do you really have a way to help Sun Lang? I mean, help him win. I don't know. I'm just going to do my best. Yinluo turned and walked in the direction of her courtyard. Hearing this, she turned and smiled at Qiao Patao. However, if Sun Lang wants to destroy the Imperial Palace, I think I will definitely be able to help. You might not believe it, but I have a lot of experience in razing an ancient palace with a long history to the ground. And at this moment, Shen Yaohua had already arrived outside the gate of Heaven Influence. The sacred sword of Water Elemental was a natural pass. The guards hurriedly let her pass. Perhaps they had already received some kind of prior warning. The lotus-like woman strolled slowly in the ancient imperial city, her face dignified and calm, making it impossible to tell what she was thinking. She walked through the long palace path and arrived in front of the imperial palace. She stepped over the high threshold, welcomed all kinds of gazes, and arrived in front of the crowd. The sacred sword of Water Elemental was in place. The emperor, who was standing on the royal steps, was the first to ask, Where is he? Shen Yaohua lowered her eyes, her voice soft and gentle. She said, He escaped on the leaf fire device. He was very fast. We couldn't catch up. Chapter 1175. Shen Yaohua stood still in the Golden Palace Hall, and the water-exuberant sacred sword glowed. At first, everyone was surprised that the new water-exuberant sacred sword saint was such a beautiful widow. Then, they were attracted by her sword. They had seen the sword of Chun Xing before, but the water-exuberant sacred sword today seemed a little lively. The dreamy blue sacred sword flew up and down, making a pleasant sound. Although the sacred sword had a spirit, this phenomenon was obviously very unusual. Everyone's gaze immediately turned to another direction. Under the imperial sword, the sun and moon sword saints stared fiercely. The sun and moon sword in the hands of the Wei siblings also made a buzzing sound. Then, it was the Hutu sacred sword in the hands of the emperor. The symphony of the four sacred swords created a strange feeling of resonance. Then, the various imperial army released by the ministers in the air also started to vibrate. Suddenly, the entire Golden Palace Hall became noisy. Strange phenomenon. Those ministers who didn't release the imperial army also noticed the strange phenomenon in their bodies. They treated the imperial army as precious as their own lives. They never left the imperial army and used their own true qi, neishi, and qi to nourish the imperial army so that they could be more intimate and use more power. This tradition had been going on for hundreds of years. Every warrior treated their imperial army with the most sincere attitude, and the imperial army had never disappointed them. Except today. On this day, the top heroes of the Imperium discovered, to their horror, that the imperial weapon, which they had spent all their time with and had never let them down, was now giving off a terrifying feeling of unfamiliarity. It was as if the children they raised had suddenly entered a rebellious period and started to question and rebel against their own will. They had their own ideas, and they were very bad ideas. Damn! Sun Lang's eyes shone with a sky-blue light. Through the light film of the origin, he saw a strange phenomenon that was enough to move him. In a flash, he thought of many things. Some of the puzzles, some of the difficulties, and some of the contradictions had all been figured out. If that was the case, he abruptly turned his head and looked at the hundreds of officials below the imperial stairs. Among them were his enemies, his comrades, and even more neutral people. These people were the elites of the entire empire, gathering the most knowledgeable and brave people in the world. With the Tianyuan generation, there were far too many heroes in the world who had been ensnared. This is going to be fun. Li Guangyuan wanted to say something, but before he could, the emperor chopped down with his sword. Li Guangyuan's cultivation was not worth mentioning, but at this moment, he had merged with the devil. The power of the Hutu divine sword was 100% unleashed, and with the devil secretly controlling it, he was a formidable opponent that could not be underestimated. The Great Yin and Great Yang attacked at the same time. The Wei siblings rushed forward at the same time. Spiritual qi swept out, and the two swords combined. The sun and the moon rotated, and Yin and Yang attacked together. Two graceful sword lights intertwined and bombarded. With her sword in hand, Shun Yaohua gracefully flew into the sky and struck down from above. In the blink of an eye, the four sword saints had joined forces to attack. Android and the others shouted, "Don't bully us with numbers." Sun Lang shouted, "Don't come over. Don't use the Imperial Army." Unfortunately, his shout was too late. The martial artists of the Empire had relied on the Imperial Army for a long time, and this had become an instinct. In the blink of an eye, Pongji and the others had the Imperial Army in their hands. There were dozens of high-grade Imperial Army swords in the field, and as if they were resonating, the resonance caused the blood of the people to boil. Even the most powerful of the heavyweights were no exception. Tianzai shouted, "Your Majesty!" Sun Lang, "Everyone stop!" Li Guangyuan shouted, "Don't talk too much. Help me kill the enemy." Sun Lang said exasperatedly, "Don't cause trouble. Squat on the side and wait for death." Tianzai was already suspicious of the emperor, but he was even more confused by Sun Lang's words. The heavyweights looked at each other and then adopted a very normal solution. "Comrades, let's attack together and separate the two sides first." They took out the Imperial Army together, and dozens of the Imperial Army weapons shone brightly. Then they realized that the Imperial Army, which they had always been able to command, actually refused to communicate and mobilize them. The intensity of the resonance in the field suddenly increased by 2 times, and the martial artists with low cultivation were already on the verge of collapse. The remaining martial artists who did not take out the Imperial Army also changed their expressions. Their consciousness had sensed that a great danger was about to descend. The scene became a mess. Sun Lang was surrounded by 4 people and attacked like a rotating lantern. Li Guangyan, who was possessed by the devil, was already a strong opponent, and there were also 3 sword saints of the same level attacking together. Sun Lang could not resist empty-handed, so he could only take out the sacred fire sword and slash violently. For a moment, the light was blazing, and the sword aura was everywhere. With the sacred fire sword in hand, Sun Lang's weapon was no longer at a disadvantage. He displayed the sword techniques that had been tempered thousands of times in the great wilderness mountains and surpassed the mortal world, and immediately took back the initiative. However, there were now 5 sacred swords in the field. The intense resonance caused by the collision of the 5 sacred swords affected the rest of the Imperial Army, and the intensity of the mysterious and dangerous resonance field was constantly increasing. The ministers in the Golden Palace felt dizzy, and the weakest official was already holding his head and screaming. Some were rolling on the ground, some were in a daze, and the most resilient person stuttered, "Something came in. What is this?" Seeing that the situation was not good, the Minister of War shouted, "Go! Go quickly! Leave first!" But at this moment, the emperor took out the sixth imperial army sword. It was the sword of Jupiter. The six sacred swords gathered together, and an invisible force field enveloped the entire palace, blocking the people who were escaping outside. Something under the golden palace seemed to have been activated, and it was a formation that had been carved long ago. Someone had been planning for this day for a long, long time. When the light of Jupiter appeared in the golden palace, the ministers who still had the ability to think were shocked, and the sword of Jupiter destroyed the last of their wishful thinking. The source of all these changes was indeed the emperor. Tianzai roared, "Your Majesty, what do you want to do?" Li Guangyuan laughed wildly. "I am the emperor, and I have no scruples, and I will do anything." The emperor was crazy. This was the only thought in the shocked and angry ministers' minds. Now that things had come to this, they began to regret. They should have listened to Sun Lang's proposition. But who would have thought that the emperor was so crazy? Pang Ji and the others also sat on the ground. They gritted their teeth and held on, resisting the whirlpool and suction that came from the depths of their souls. But it was like the most original power that came from the depths of their hearts, making them unable to resist or resist. They tried hard to open their eyes, looking for the most familiar shadow among the crisscrossing figures on the imperial stairs. From the Battle of Tianyuan until now, they had been following that shadow. The commander of war would not give up on anyone. The commander of war would not lose any battle. And the commander of war would never disappoint. Someone cried out involuntarily, "Marshal!" Under the fear of the unknown, under the strong sense of powerlessness, and the fact that their own strength was not enough to rely on, the weak people could only pin their hopes on a few heroes. It was not only the people who had always trusted Sun Lang. It was also the people who had once questioned, talked about, viewed with hostility, and despised Sun Lang. At this time, they realized that this former hero still seemed to be standing in the position of a hero. They forgot his bad points, remembered his good points, remembered his merits, remembered his achievements, and remembered the reason why he fought. But at this moment, the person who seemed to have always held the right position was in a bitter battle. 4 sword saints, 5 holy swords. This was a terrifying, killing formation that could wipe out all living things in the world. He seemed to be unable to protect himself. So how could he respond to the people's calls? Sun Lang turned his head. He turned his head while being strangled by the 4 sword saints and looked at the crowd. In an instant, the same thought appeared in everyone's mind. The commander of war is looking at me. Then they heard the same voice. Sun Lang said calmly, "Trust me." These words seemed to be said to his old subordinates, but also seemed to be said to everyone. Then they remembered his previous question. "But which one of you could trust me?" For a moment, no one could tell what they felt in their hearts. Some continued to wail. Some remained silent. Some resigned themselves to fate. Some madly attacked the invisible force field wall. Some sang praises to the emperor. And those who did not believe never believed. Only those who had always believed in Sun Lang felt relieved, and the fear and unease in their hearts seemed to have dissipated. Pangji, Android, Yin Song, Bao Shiren, Su Dingfong. Although they were still doing their best to resist the suction and vortex from the depths of their souls, their expressions had already become calm. Apart from this, there was one other person present who believed in Sun Lang. Not only did she believe in Sun Lang, she also knew that Sun Lang's words of "trust me" were said to her alone. The meaning of his words was, "Get ready." In an instant, a blazing red light suddenly flashed, and fierce flames pierced through heaven and earth. The violent and boiling power fiercely swelled, and the sacred fire sword in Sun Lang's hand erupted with 100 times, 1,000 times more brilliance. He laughed and said, "Do you want it? Take it." The sacred fire sword left his hand and soared into the sky, turning into a rain of fire that roared and fell. Li Guangyuan shouted, "Stop it!" The 7 luminaries' sacred sword was the top imperial army of Hutu, and the aftermath of their clash was no small matter. If 5 or 6 sacred swords clashed, it would probably raze the entire palace to the ground. The reason why they could control the range of the battle was all because of the formation under the Golden Palace. It absorbed the impact of the clash and turned it into a resonance power that awakened the Imperial army. And now, Sun Lang had summoned a meteor fire rain, a large-scale AoE attack that descended from the sky. Whether it was to control the situation or to obtain the sacred fire sword, Li Guangyuan had to stop this attack. Taking advantage of this gap, Sun Lang broke out of the encirclement and rushed downwards. He roared, "Imperial army!" The heavenly strategy's Empress concubine suddenly leaped up and pulled out her heavenly essence saber. Golden light shone brightly. Sun Lang grabbed the back of the saber with one hand and condensed a foot-long sword chi with the other hand, slashing towards the Empress concubine. Empress calmly faced it. With a muffled sound, as if something had been cut, Empress let out a painful groan and felt a splitting headache. She felt empty in her heart. This was the emptiness of her life being taken away from her Imperial army. Before she could taste this pain, she felt her arm being tightly grabbed by Sun Lang. Empress opened her eyes and met Sun Lang's eyes. "You once ordered Zhao Feihuang to find the fragment of the demonic artifact, which hid the remnant soul of a sky demon that was not dead. All these years, the Emperor ordered you to secretly collect the demonic artifact was probably like this." Sun Lang said, "Now it seems that the leader of these remnant souls has assigned them new houses." The Emperor concubine's pupils suddenly shrank. Although Sun Lang's words were concise and comprehensive, with her intelligence and wisdom, she was still able to figure out the inside story. "You mean, I used to think that only the top Imperial army like the Holy Sword could produce complete intelligence, and I used to think that only the 7 luminary sword saint would be in danger of being possessed. Previously, I hinted that the Imperial army could be possessed, but it was more of a fabrication to make the ministers feel threatened. Now it seems that I was wrong. The devil can't produce the souls of the Imperial army on a large scale, and he doesn't need it either. Because living Imperial army is hard to find, but living Sky Demon is abundant." Sun Lang quickly said, "We don't have much time. Are you ready?" Empress was responsible for collecting the demonic artifact, and only she had the chance to solve this problem. Empress didn't answer. Instead, she sneered and said, "Do you believe me? You still need me to think of a solution." Sun Lang shook his head and said, "You're wrong. It's not that I don't have a solution, it's just that I don't have a better solution." He suddenly pulled Empress and dragged her toward the door of the Golden Palace. The Tianyuan blade flashed, and the unparalleled sharpness of the blade cut a hole in the indestructible force field wall. He waved his arm and threw Empress out. "If you want to save this country, go for it." The force field wall immediately closed, and the light of the holy sword of fire dimmed. Li Guangyuan had also succeeded in capturing it. The officials with low cultivation had already stood up shakily. They looked around in confusion and finally focused their eyes on Sun Lang. Unforgettable hatred shot out from their eyes. Sun Lang carried the Tianyuan blade on his shoulder and stretched his neck. "Well, at least I can have some fun in this situation." He muttered to himself, "It's time to avenge a private grudge." Chapter 1176. The officials with weaker cultivation staggered to their feet. Their eyes flashed with a strange light that was not human. A resonance in their souls faintly connected them together. The eyes of the mutants holding the Imperial army focused on Sun Lang. Their eyes turned from blank to sharp. Awkward words came out of their mouths. That was not human language. It was the demonic voice of the Sky Demon. It's you." Because the structure of human vocal cords was different, their speech was slightly awkward at first. Then, they became fluent, and their tone was filled with deep hatred and even fear. The great destroyer, the holy enemy, the sword of extinction, the memory of the destruction from years ago was branded in their souls. After they recovered, it was still engraved in their bones. The remnant souls of the Sky Demon let out shrill and angry roars. The human in front of them was the terminator of everything. The brilliant civilization, the powerful army, the last hope, everything had been destroyed by the sword light a few years ago. No, it would not be destroyed. A new opportunity had arrived. This time, they had to defeat this terrifying enemy and create a new hope. Accompanied by inhuman roars, dozens of Imperial Army soldiers crisscrossed and streaked across the broken streams of light. They suddenly attacked Sun Lang, and their brazen killing intent spread wildly in all directions. With a bang, the flying Imperial Army crashed into an invisible wall. The space in front of Sun Lang froze, and the flying star fragments and sparks from the collision scattered in all directions. The gorgeous Imperial Army soldiers that were like works of art stopped in mid-air. Sun Lang stretched out his finger and pointed at them one by one. He tilted his head. It looks like it's not a possession, but an exchange. What's going on? Majestic and boundless sword chi surged forth. Sun Lang's formless wall of chi was able to block the attacks of several tens of low and mid-grade Emperor weapons. However, it was unable to block the full-powered sword strike of a sword saint. Furthermore, the person wielding the sword was the Emperor who had fused with the devil spirit. With 3 sacred swords in hand, how could his cultivation be so powerful? Li Guangyuan floated over with the sword of Star Suppressor in his left hand and the sword of Jupiter in his right. The sword of Confusion floated beside him, while the 3 sword saints followed closely behind. The 6 great sacred swords had already gathered. This was the strongest strategic group in the world. Only the last one was left. Li Guangyuan focused his senses and his face darkened. The golden, luminous, sacred sword. You didn't bring it with you. Sun Lang waved the Tianyuan saber in his hand and said, "This is an important weapon of the royal family. It's not inferior to the golden holy sword. The saber has a murderous aura, which is similar to the West gold element. It should be able to be used." Emperor Sun Ran said, "I will not make do." Sun Lang spread out his hands and said, "Is that so? Aren't you just using the soul of the sky demon to make do as a henchman?" Li Guangyuan smiled gloomily. "The Earth's sacred sword is the ancestor of the Imperial Army. With the Earth's sacred sword in hand, they are my most obedient servants. At least, they are much more loyal than these traitors." After saying that, he suddenly raised the Earth's sacred sword and said sternly, "Listen up. Sun Lang is a great traitor. Search the entire city for his family and followers. Kill all those who resist. Order Empress Tensei to be his accomplice. If he escapes from the palace, capture him as well. He must be captured alive." Then he grinned at Sun Lang and said, "I don't care what preparations you have made, I don't care what tricks you have, and I don't care what kind of relationship you have with my daughter. I can tell you now that it's useless. Everything is useless. Everything is. Yes, I will." There were ministers who were successfully possessed one after another. The awakened souls of the sky demon let out angry roars. The last moment of their lives was the day of the destruction of their race. Now that they could see the light of day again, their joy was replaced by anger. This was because the irreconcilable enemy of their race was right in front of them. The overwhelming anger was directed at Sun Lang. But the Earth's sacred sword issued an order. The reborn sky demon let out angry roars of dissatisfaction and struggle. But they still had to obey the order. They controlled the Imperial Army and were about to rush out of the Golden Palace to carry out the Emperor's order. But suddenly, there was a flash of saber light, and Gang Chi swept across. With a loud bang, the floor tiles around the Golden Palace shattered. Tall mounds rose and formed a continuous wall of earth. It suddenly appeared in the vast and magnificent palace and blocked the way out. Sun Lang waved the Tianyuan saber in his hand and yawned. "Did I say you could leave?" Li Guangyuan snorted coldly. "Shameless boasting. Sun Lang, you are already at the end of your road. Now that the 6 sacred swords have gathered, the 4 sword saints are besieging you, and the civil and military officials are about to join the battle. What can you do without a sacred sword in your hand, and with the Tianyuan saber that will soon be out of your control?" Sun Lang laughed and glanced proudly at everyone present. The 2 sword saints of the Sun-Moon sacred sword and the dead souls of the sky demon, who were possessing the civil and military officials of the imperial court. They were enemies everywhere. But so what? He smiled modestly. "Why don't you ask the trash here what small work I, Sun Lang, did with my bare hands in the great desolate mountain. Everyone's expression changed abruptly because in an instant, the sky and earth changed color. Dense blood chi and monstrous killing intent gushed out violently, and even the air seemed to be filled with the smell of rust. For a moment, they seemed to see mountains of corpses and seas of blood, a boundless painting with the theme of battle, and an endless battlefield of slaughter. You are surrounded by me. Isn't this a bit cliché? Sun Lang roared and swung the Tianyuan saber. The four elements of water, fire, metal, and earth appeared at the same time. Based on the number of the five elements, they turned into the image of all things. With endless killing intent, he soared into the sky and dove down toward the crowd. Everyone rise! With a loud bang, the earth shook as if an earth dragon had turned over. The entire capital felt the strong tremor. Empress, who was rushing out of the palace, sensed something and turned around in shock. She heard a loud rumble coming from the direction of the Golden Palace, as if 10,000 elephants were trampling on the ground. The momentum was extremely terrifying. She came to an abrupt halt. They've started fighting, Empress muttered. The Golden Palace is where the court assembly is held and where the heart of the court is located. It can accommodate thousands of court officials, but as a place where peerless experts compete, it's really too small. Sun Lang's plan is very simple. He will hold everyone here while I look for an opportunity to break out of this situation. But as a battlefield, the Golden Hall cannot be fully utilized. If he keeps defending for a long time, there will definitely be mistakes. His temperament is calm and decisive now. If things go wrong, he will definitely kill. But those lackeys of his, some of the ministers and officials he looks down on, or insignificant people, will definitely be killed by him one by one. I can't let him kill people at will, so I have to help him expand the battlefield. The officials in the Golden Palace are the elites of the country. If they're all wiped out, the vitality of the empire will be greatly damaged. The government will not be able to pass up the orders of the country, and the overall national strength will definitely plummet. In these troubled times, the four major countries will definitely not let go of such a good opportunity. I can't let this happen. Her eyes flickered, and in an instant, she came up with the most suitable method. Two things, one at the same time. If I'm right, the change in the court assembly is just the beginning. In addition to the hundreds of imperial officials in the Golden Palace, there are thousands of imperial army warriors in the entire capital. The emperor's ambition will definitely not be limited to controlling hundreds of officials. I should have the same consideration as Sun Lang. The key of this matter is the magic devices I have collected over the years. The imperial treasury must have collected a lot as well. Maybe I can destroy those magic devices first, or do something before a larger scale of possession happens. In addition, she said to herself, I have to open up a bigger battlefield for Sun Lang. This matter started because of the emperor. It is the emperor's fault for bringing disaster to the country. The Li family can't absolve themselves from the blame. The royal family has to take responsibility. Such a catastrophe should be borne by the palace. Empress looked at the vast palace wall. This was the center of the world. Generations of famous craftsmen had engraved complicated, powerful, and tenacious formations here. Even if foreign enemies invaded the capital, they could set up an unbreakable defense shield to firmly block the enemies and wait for the arrival of reinforcements. As long as the defensive formation of the palace is activated, the entire imperial city will become a closed battlefield. It will be enough for Sun Lang to show his skills. He once held the Hudu sacred sword, so this is also his home ground. He will definitely make good use of this advantage. Then now, there is only one problem left. How to activate this defensive formation. Directly order the palace guards to activate the formation? No. Not to mention that I can't win people's trust. Whether the emperor has infiltrated the imperial guards is another matter. There is only one foolproof method left. Empress's eyes flashed with determination, and then she laughed at herself. I didn't expect that at such a precarious moment, the staunchest patriot will become the most treacherous traitor in the world. I really don't know how the history books will record my actions today. Forget it. She took a deep breath. Only this, there was no need for any hesitation. I don't regret it. Chapter 1177. Even during the most difficult period of the Tianyuan War, the imperial capital had never experienced a battle. 7 sword palaces, dozens of sects, more than 100 government offices, the imperial household, the martial arts hall, the imperial army, the garrison camp, countless martial artists in the imperial army, countless great grandmasters, and hundreds of years of operation. This was the world's most powerful martial arts holy land, where the top talents of the world's strongest countries gathered. It was never empty, and had always maintained an invincible strength. Even the ferocious, otherworldly demons didn't dare to carelessly attack this city. In the hypothetical plans of the various countries, attacking the Hutu Empire's capital was a ridiculous option. This was a city that would never fall. But today, the people of the imperial capital were awakened from their dreams. A series of earth-shattering explosions shook the entire capital. Everyone looked toward the imperial capital. Even those who did not know martial arts could sense one thing. Something incredible was happening in the imperial palace. The warden's office of the 5 cities immediately activated the emergency plan, and the 4 gates of the capital were immediately closed. The capital magistrate and the bailiffs were mobilized, but this was as far as they could go. All the officials of the various government offices were trapped in the imperial capital. From a martial arts hall to the Bureau of Military Personnel, the officials with the authority to make emergency decisions were not present. The officials left behind either did not have enough authority or were too timid to do anything. The officials of the Bureau of Military Personnel were in an uproar. Due to the lack of information, they did not know what to do next. Some suggested that they immediately use their tokens to mobilize the 8 garrison camps, but this was rejected by their colleagues. This was because the Tiger Tally and the Soldier Seal were controlled by the Minister of War, and the Martial Arts Hall could not contact him. There were also no 3 assistant ministers in the government office to vote. Privately mobilizing soldiers was a serious crime. After all, no one was as brave as General Shinsei. The capital magistrate's office was also in chaos. Because Lord Bao had gone to the court assembly, the remaining officials could only follow Lord Bao's principles of governance. They prioritized maintaining order and protecting the good. As for other matters, they did not care, nor did they know what to do. This was a major change that had never occurred in the several hundred years since the founding of the empire. Those sages who had drawn up the laws and principles of the empire must have never imagined such a situation. How would the remaining administrative forces react or even retaliate when all the officials of the emperor's court were captured? No, not at all. Because Hutu was so powerful, no one believed that the empire would fall into such a desperate situation. No one had ever imagined such a situation. No one would have thought that the emperor himself would be the first to betray this great country. Therefore, when the shocking change happened, everyone was stunned. The military and political system that the empire was proud of did not make a more active reaction. Every government office was very competent, but only competent. They were only passively doing their jobs. The capital government maintained order on the streets. The military department of the 5 cities sealed off the city gates. The Ministry of War ordered all departments to enter a state of war, and the Ministry of Justice immediately increased the security of the prisons and other prisons, closely monitoring those dangerous prisoners. That was all. A group of dragons without a leader was the best way to describe the current situation. That direction is the imperial city. In Shinto province, Chao Patao looked into the distance, staring at the majestic palace walls of the imperial city, his fists clenched tightly. Lu Shujian floated to his side, her expression extremely solemn. I feel a great pressure. That is the power of the 7 luminaries' sacred sword. Almost all of the sacred swords are gathered there. As expected, something happened. Zhao Yunlong growled, "That woman. It is meaningless to say this now. I have a part of the power of the fiendish sword of K2. With my spiritual sense, what is happening over there is an evenly matched confrontation." Lu Shujin said, "I know how you're feeling right now. but everyone has to stay calm. In that kind of chaotic battle, Zhao Yunlong alone won't help. If we stay outside, we can do more things. Zhao Yunlong glanced at her indifferently. I am a general, and you are a military doctor. I don't need you to talk to me about tactics. She jumped down from the roof and said in a deep voice, Everyone, the abnormal situation has been confirmed. Something earth-shattering is happening in the Imperial City. As for the center of the storm, it is most likely Sun Lang. Zhao Feihuang immediately asked, What can we do? Chao Patao shook his head. Don't worry. Before the three armies move, information comes first. What we do depends on the information we have. We have to understand the current situation. If the worst-case scenario is that the Emperor has gathered the officials to attack Sun Lang, we have to consider making a big fuss and running away. Su Qingwan had a worried expression. Are there other possibilities? There must be, Zhao Yunlong said resolutely. I believe in Sun Lang. He will not let the situation deteriorate to that extent. She looked at Courier. Mao, Sun Lang does not allow me to use the Imperial Army anymore, so aerial reconnaissance. Sun Lang has told me, Zhao Yunlong of Hudu, I have heard of your name during the war. You are a legendary general and a great warrior. Your bravery and achievements have also been recognized by the Church. At this time, I am willing to listen to your orders temporarily if it is reasonable. Mao Mei raised her hand and summoned the Death Messenger armor. I will do the aerial reconnaissance. Zhao Yunlong followed him and said, You're wrong. I'm not asking you to perform aerial reconnaissance. What I mean is that you carry me into the sky. This is the capital of Hutu Empire, and we're in a state of war. I'm sure you know what a flying machine from Lihua will encounter. The Royal Array and the Air Attack Force are not to be trifled with. Zhang Yinluo said, There's also a blazing angel here. I can also help. Zhao Yunlong turned back and said, Stay here. Unless the situation is urgent, you are not to go to the front line personally. This is the bottom line that I agree to let you stay here temporarily. Otherwise, we will leave the city immediately. Yin Luo's face revealed an indignant expression, but Zhao Yunlong's gaze bore a hint of coldness within his indifference, causing her to resentfully give up on the thought of arguing. I understand. Zhao Yunlong took some weapons. Courier had already entered the cockpit and sat down. She saw Chao Patao standing outside and frowned. Why are you still not coming in? There is no need. Chao Patao tied a bundle of javelins behind his back and said indifferently, I will hang them outside your machine. Don't worry. If you have heard of my name, then you must know that one of the functions of the Imperial Army is to give me the ability to fly through the air. Then don't fall to your death. The thrusters shot out hot streams of flames, and the blazing angel rose into the sky. Zhao Yunlong grabbed the handle of a pod and flew into the sky under everyone's eyes. Her voice was still calm in the fierce wind. She said in the cockpit, Now move toward the Imperial Palace. Pay attention to the altitude, pay attention to the distance, and be careful. Understood. Courier changed the direction and moved forward. After a while, she said indifferently, By the way, don't underestimate Zhang Yinluo. She is actually very powerful. Zhao Yunlong said indifferently, Is that so? It had to be said that after hanging out with Sun Lang for a long time, her vision and so on had reached an unimaginable level. Very powerful and so on, forget it, with her little martial arts. Below, Yinluo expressionlessly retracted his gaze and turned around. Zhao Feihuang shouted, Where are you going? Come and help. Also, it is better for us to move as a group. Yinluo turned around and suddenly smiled very warmly. I am just making some preparations. In the Golden Palace. Do you know? The Imperial Army scattered in all directions. Sun Lang was like a swimming dragon, dodging left and right, shuttling back and forth in the crowd. The Sky Demon had just awakened and had not yet adapted to the human body. They could only display 50 to 60% of their combat strength. There were also many people, and it was a mess. There was no way for them to organize an effective resistance. When Sun Lang rushed in, he was like a fierce tiger rushing into a flock of sheep. He swung the Tianyuan blade and violently beat them up. Ayaya, if this is a game, then this must be the climax. Sun Lang sent a sky demon flying with the back of his blade. He muttered, "The teammates of the protagonist are controlled by the evil magic of the big boss and become the pawns of the villain. This is the most annoying plot design because you have to think of a way to defeat these former companions one by one. Furthermore, you can't harm their lives. Who asked them to be your companions? You can only think of a way to defeat them and then use them. Friends, feelings, come, call, wake up." He stabbed the Tianyuan blade into the ground and grabbed another sky demon who couldn't dodge in time. He took a closer look. Very good. The victim was a big troll from the Censorate and Pongji's sworn enemy. He went against General Sun every day and even participated in the impeachment with a strong sense of righteousness. He was an unyielding person. Sun Lang shouted, "Let me help you. You have to wake up." There was a series of crackling sounds as 20 to 30 slaps landed on the sky demon's face. Then, a friendly iron fist landed on the sky demon's handsome chin. Then, a knee landed on the sky demon's genitals. The sky demon's eyes bulged. After taking over the human's body, he quickly understood the sadness that belonged to humans. To be honest, the current situation isn't too bad. Sun Lang pulled out the Tianyuan blade and rushed into the crowd. In this situation, I'll use some small tactics that I'm usually embarrassed to use on my colleagues. No one should blame me, right? That's enough. The Emperor led the crowd to chase after Sun Lang. He thought that he had an overwhelming advantage, but he hadn't succeeded yet. After all, he had underestimated Sun Lang and Sun Lang's experience and ability in group fights. In addition, there were too many people in the Golden Palace Hall, and many of his moves couldn't be used. He was really restricted. He held the two sacred swords tightly, and a terrifying power condensed at the tip of the swords. A powerful killing move was ready to be used. Don't worry about the casualties. Put it all on Sun Lang. Now stop. The powerful energy that filled his body suddenly stopped circulating, and the head of the demon's spirit, which was composed of black mist, emerged from the spirit sea. They are my people, and they're also your subjects. You have to cherish them like a monarch and not sacrifice and kill them at will. Do you understand? Li Guangyin said angrily, but he's so slippery. What do you think we should do? He just wants to delay us, but he will eventually realize in despair that the longer he drags on, the stronger we become and the greater our advantage. Hunting him is like hunting. We have to make him tired and gradually tire him out. We have to be patient. Do you understand? The devil said slowly. Right now, we urgently need a victory. A victory outside the imperial city and in the imperial capital. In the mind, the emperor and the devil were talking quickly. It takes some time for the resonance field to spread outside. We originally planned to order the ministers who had successfully ascended to announce Sun Lang's rebellion and order the imperial capital to attack him together. However, he seems to have a natural sense for the ministers who had successfully ascended. A few of them wanted to secretly break out, but they were all stopped by him. The emperor said, "In the end, we still have to take down this thief." Otherwise, the devil said, "No, there's another way." He can only sense his people who have been possessed. In such an intense battle, if a purebred human sneaks out quietly, he probably won't be able to detect it. Li Guanyuan had a thought and looked toward a corner of the Golden Palace. There, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was curled up, trying to reduce his presence as much as possible. He looked at the chaotic situation in the field and looked at Sun Lang's figure, who was killing without restraint. His eyes were filled with viciousness and hatred. Sensing the emperor's gaze, his body trembled, and he quickly put on a flattering and loyal expression, just like a dog. Chapter 1178. With a loud bang, Li Jinqing's figure was thrown out. From the Golden Palace Hall that was sealed by Di Shan, a few figures quickly flew up and caught His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. They were the eunuchs in the palace. The leader asked anxiously, "So, it's His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. The situation is urgent, so I won't say much. May I ask your Highness, What happened in the imperial court? Is His Majesty well? Li Jiansheng shook his head. His face was still filled with fear and viciousness. He calmed down for a moment and grabbed the old eunuch. He shouted ferociously, "Have you seen Empress Tensei?" The eunuch was shocked by the crown prince's ferocious look. "I haven't seen her, but someone reported that His Highness Empress left the palace in a hurry and asked why. He said that there were rebels in the imperial court and he was ordered to send troops to suppress them. The imperial guards don't have high authority, so they didn't dare to stop him," Li Jiansheng roared. "She's the one who rebelled. Follow me to chase after her." The eunuch was shocked. The surrounding imperial guards also had looks of disbelief on their faces. General Tensei rebelled? This was the biggest joke of the year. Li Jiansheng roared. "Why are you looking at me? I'm the crown prince of the imperial court. Do you think you can fake an imperial edict?" He looked around with a ferocious look. Sun Lang assassinated the emperor, and Empress Tensei helped him. The imperial court is in a mess. Quickly go to the various government offices in the capital and announce this. Order all the troops to enter the palace and capture the rebels. The old eunuch was even more shocked. "What did your highness say? If commander of war wanted to assassinate the emperor, why would he choose to do it today?" F***CKU. The crown prince roared. "Where my confidants?" A group of people swarmed out and galloped along the straight palace path, whistling all the way. "His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince is here. Open the door, open the door, open the door." The 9 gates of heaven charged forward. The Forbidden Palace is far away. She escaped not long ago and lost the Imperial Army. How far could she run in such a hurry? She must not have left the palace. He had to catch her. He had to catch her now. We can't let her get away. Horses were not allowed in the Imperial Palace, and elite mounts could not be dispatched in a hurry. However, Li Jiansheng had the Imperial Army. He and a group of guards drove the Imperial Army forward as fast as lightning. The Crown Prince only cared about running. He was running madly, panting deeply as he ran with all his might. Behind him, there were still loud rumbling sounds. Every sound smashed into his heart, and the terrifying pressure reminded him that the danger had yet to pass. Intense fear swept through his body. Sun Lang. He clenched his teeth tightly, suppressing the fear that came from the marrow of his bones. That man, a terrifying man, a man who was as powerful as a demon. 6 divine swords for sword saints and all the court officials. Such a high-level encirclement was enough to wipe out any enemy in the world, but it could not hurt Sun Lang in the slightest. Li Jiansheng had witnessed this ridiculous and unbelievable performance from the beginning to the end. He watched as Sun Lang shuttled back and forth in the battlefield where the Imperial Army was flying and killing intent filled the air. It was as if he had entered a no-man's land, causing this luxurious encirclement team to suffer defeat time and time again. The more he watched, the more terrified he became. The more he watched, the more timid he became. The more he watched, the more venomous he became. Sun Lang had once been on his side. Sun Lang had helped him consolidate his position as the Crown Prince. Sun Lang had even become the Crown Prince's Grand Tutor. With Sun Lang's help, he had become the legitimate Crown Prince. And just now, he had betrayed Sun Lang. This was human nature, wasn't it? Because Sun Lang also did not have good intentions, and he and Sun Lang only had a relationship of mutual benefit. Since this was the case, when he was clearly at a disadvantage and his father had the upper hand, what was wrong with decisively abandoning the darkness and joining the light? Moreover, this bastard had dared to assassinate his father. As the son and the crown prince, was he going to be entangled with a traitor who intended to assassinate the emperor? That's right. The one who was wrong was not him. The one who was wrong was Sun Lang. With such feelings, he had betrayed Sun Lang. When the emperor had the upper hand, he had decisively rushed out and angrily rebuked this treacherous traitor. He had clearly stated that he had severed all ties with this traitor. After all, no matter how one looked at it, Sun Lang did not have any hope of winning. From a moral point of view, the assassination in front of the emperor had been witnessed by everyone. From a military point of view, there were several sword saints at the side, and the court officials could also extend a helping hand. Sun Lang's defeat was already set in stone. If he did not decisively sever all ties at this time, could it be that he and Sun Lang, this broken ship, would sink to the bottom of the sea? Thus, Li Jiansheng made his choice. Then, he sank into fear. Because Sun Lang had not been cleanly defeated, not only were there people supporting him, there were also many. Bao Shiren of the capital government had run out to join in the fun, and the court officials who had received the favor of Marquis Wu had to think twice. Apart from this, his arrogant and tyrannical little sister, who had believed herself infallible from a young age, had also gone crazy for some unknown reason. She had actually bet on Sun Lang in this kind of situation. It was simply inexplicable and completely reckless. But just based on the prestige and influence of these people, there were actually signs of turning the situation around. But what really made Li Jianxing fall into fear was what happened later. After all, Hutu was a country of martial arts. At the end of this ultimate temple battle, both sides had unanimously chosen to use their fists to speak. Thus, Sun Lang had suppressed the entire court with his blade, and actually fought evenly with the four-sword saints in this kind of ambush. Until now, not only did he not show any signs of being defeated, but he also became more and more courageous. This was completely illogical. Li Jiansheng had thought that Sun Lang would soon be chopped into meat paste, but now his thoughts were shaken. He even had a kind of absurd illusion Sun Lang could win. When he thought of this, the fear in his heart became even more intense. No, he could not let him win. How could he win? He could even win in this kind of situation, and even defeated Father Emperor. Then who in this country could stop him? Then who in this world could defeat him? Most importantly, Gu betrayed him. If he wins, what will happen to Gu? How will he take revenge on Gu? When he thought of Sun Lang's various methods and his casual words of "don't worry," great fear hovered in his heart. Sun Lang must lose, Sun Lang must die, and Gu must do something. Previously, in the Golden Palace, he had been surrounded by killing intent. Although he hadn't been possessed by the Emperor weapon, he had still been forced to flee like a rat and avoid the aftershocks of the battle. He could only grit his teeth and stare at Sun Lang's figure, cursing him to be defeated immediately. He was too weak and couldn't do anything else. But now, everything was different. He escaped. With the help and guidance of Father Emperor, he secretly escaped. Father Emperor's familiar yet strange voice still echoed in his ears, reminding him, ordering him, and instructing him. Li Jianxing knew that he had no other choice, because Sun Lang must die, because he wanted to please Father Emperor. He wanted to live, he wanted to keep his life and wealth, and he wanted to continue to be the crown prince. Therefore, he had no other choice but to follow this path to the end. Moreover, Empress Tensei's figure flashed in his mind. Bitch, you still can't forget your lover, right? You want to live and die with him, right? You managed to escape, and so did I. You are as flustered as a stray dog, but I have Father Emperor's imperial edict and orders. This is a heaven-sent opportunity. You were originally the strongest candidate for the position of crown prince, but you actually stupidly chose to stand on Sun Lang's side. This is my chance. As long as I complete Father Emperor's orders, as long as I take care of you, as long as Sun Lang dies, I will obtain Father Emperor's favor and continue to be the crown prince. And in the future, Emperor, you will also die. Sun Lang will also die. All of you will also die. I can win. I want to win. I will win. All of you look down on me. I will do it for all of you to see. At this moment, someone shouted, I see her. Li Jiansheng looked over and saw the gate of heaven influence open. Empress's figure disappeared through the gate. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince was seething with anger and roared, Stop her! She is a traitor! Empress had already heard the commotion behind her. She rushed out of the gate of heaven influence and slapped her forehead. Oh no, she muttered to herself. He actually came out. That day, the Emperor pretended to be attacked by an assassin. She and Sun Lang cooperated tacitly, and the Ministry of Imperial Finances was controlled by Tensei Province, while the power of the imperial house fell into the hands of Prince Chengcheng. One person got the power, while the other got the face. Empress had thought that this was a good deal, but today she realized that she was wrong. The imperial house had been infiltrated by the crown prince, and many key positions had been changed to people from the Eastern Palace. This meant that under extreme circumstances, the crown prince could easily pull in a group of people loyal to him. This could be an opportunity, but in this situation, there was no weapon. The Tianyuan blade had already been taken away by Sun Lang. Empress thought of this and continued to rush forward. The only thing she could do now was to run. Ha 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 ha. The gate of heaven influence opened with a bang, and Li Jiansheng took the lead to rush out. He laughed loudly and said, "He ran away. He ran away. So you also know how to run away. Look at you now. Chase, chase, chase. If you catch him, I will reward you handsomely. His Majesty will reward you handsomely." The hook, chain, and rope flew through the air. The Emperor's concubine's figure danced, dodging left and right. She was busy with military affairs all year round and didn't train too hard. But in terms of talent, she was still an outstanding talent of the imperial family. In the past, Sun Lang often gave her pointers and guidance. She was naturally very familiar with the way to protect her life. Oof, did she think of him again? The Emperor's concubine was slightly distracted and her movements slowed down. The sharp hook brushed past her arm, causing blood to spurt out. She gave a muffled groan and staggered backwards. This pause allowed the remaining guards to surround her from both sides. In the blink of an eye, there was an impenetrable ambush from all sides. Li Jiansheng walked out of the crowd, his face filled with unconcealable viciousness and pleasure. He was trembling with excitement. An indescribable sense of satisfaction and accomplishment filled his heart. He had finally won. He had finally won once. He had completely trampled this detestable woman under his feet. "You're finished." His voice was even distorted, as shrill as a woman's. "To think that you would have such a day." Empress covered her injured arm. Even in this desperate situation, her waist was still straight, her gaze was still cold, and her words were still as firm as a rock. "If today is my end," she said, "then it's the end of the Li dynasty's own choice. Don't be an alarmist." Li Jiansheng said harshly, "You abandoned yourself. You were entangled with Sun Lang. You chose this path yourself. You lost, and I will win." Empress shook her head and said, "No, you can't win. Today I did what a qualified ruler should do. As a descendant of the Li family, you can invert black and white, but you can't tell right from wrong. You only saw the choice between me and Sun Lang, but you can't see the darkness surrounding the Emperor. You don't understand the responsibility of a descendant of the royal family. How can you win like this?" Li Jiansheng said hatefully, "I will let you see me win with your own eyes. Capture her." At this moment, there was a whooshing sound in the distance. Dozens of arrows shot through the air, and the hooves of horses thundered. A group of horses rushed over. The leader shouted, "Your Highness, a lowly general is late." The capital was shaken by the strange changes in the imperial city. The aristocratic families, generals, and various government departments all sent people to gather information. The officials left behind in Tensei province were no exception. This group of scouts was working secretly. When they saw that their general was surrounded, they didn't care about anything else. They directly rushed over with arrows and horses. Empress's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. She shouted, "Kill them all." The soldiers of Tensei province were stunned at first, but then they chose to obey. However, the soldiers of the crown prince were all royal guards. They weren't to be trifled with. The two sides clashed. Immediately, blood splattered and corpses were lying on the ground. Amidst the flashing of swords and sabers, Li Jiansheng shouted to the scouts around him with a twisted expression, "Shinto province and Tensei province have rebelled. This traitor will be attacked by the whole world." Chapter 1179. Blood, saber light, people screaming and horses neighing. The Golden Water Bridge outside the gate of Heaven Influence hadn't been stained with blood for a long time. At that moment, the Heavenly Policy Mansion soldiers and the Imperial Guards were fighting fiercely against each other. The former carried out their commander's orders without hesitation, while the latter fought back passively in shock and anger. Both sides were top-notch elites who were well-trained. They had a great sense of honor and pride, and they fought without regard for their own lives. Thus, a brutal battle began. The scouts and officials who were wandering around the royal palace were stunned. It had been so many years since a bloody battle took place at the center of the Imperium again. The two parties involved in the battle were even more appalling. On one side, it was the light of the earth, the elite soldiers of the Heavenly Policy's residents who had made the most distinguished military achievements, and, on the other side, it was the royal guards. What was even more shocking was the roar of His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. Shinto Province and Tensei Province have both rebelled. All right, everyone was mentally prepared for Sun Lang's rebellion. But Empress Tensei's rebellion too? What the hell is this? While everyone was shocked and uncertain, the two sides had already charged together without hesitation. Their formations crisscrossed, their weapons flew, their painful roars of injuries, the dull thuds of falling horses, and the glaring blood reminded the shocked onlookers that Prince Chung and Empress Tensei were playing for real. We have to report this to the assistant minister. The Sword Order envoys from the Ministry of War immediately rode back to deliver the shocking news. Many scouts seemed to have woken up from a dream and returned. Although the shocking news from the imperial court had yet to be verified, the bloody scene outside the Gate of Heaven Influence had indirectly proved everything. In short, the Empire was about to change. At this moment, the cruel battle had already made the situation clear. Although the Tensei Province soldiers were also elites, they were just scouts and barely managed to gather a few dozen. They didn't have the advantage in terms of equipment, numbers, or preparation. On the other hand, the Imperial Guard were backed by the Imperial Guards. Once the battle started, the Imperial Guards would rush out of the palace to support them, gradually forming an overwhelming advantage in numbers. Both sides were really angry and didn't show any mercy. After several charges, the Tensei Province side suffered heavy losses. Bitch, did you see that? They all died because of you. With his sword in hand, Li Jiansheng oversaw the battle. Seeing victory was within his grasp, he decided to attack Wei Xiaobao's mind by shouting, "You have made a foolish choice by colluding with that traitor. Not only you have lost your heroic reputation, you have also brought shame to the heavens and earth of your ancestors, and brought shame to the imperial family. Look at your soldiers. They died because of your stupid orders. Your subordinates, your subjects, and their families will all be destroyed because of you." He shouted at the remaining soldiers of Tensei Province. "You are the soldiers of Hutu. You must distinguish right from wrong. There are big and small loyalties. When the general you are loyal to betrays her father and abandons her ruler, do you still want to follow her to the end? At this moment, stopping the general's actions is true loyalty. That way, you might be able to save her life and also save your family. If not," Jianxing's tone became serene. "If Tensei Province is broken, we will all perish together." This group of soldiers originally wanted to protect Empress and break out of the encirclement, but the palace walls were already filled with frightening dragon crossbows. Within a 1 li radius, they could destroy metal and stone. If they only cared about running away, they would most likely be shot into pieces. They originally wanted to capture Jiansheng alive to fight for a chance of survival. But in the end, they underestimated the strength of the Imperial Guard. At this moment, they were surrounded by strong enemies and were locked on by crossbows. Their side had suffered heavy losses and was truly in a desperate situation. At this moment, Li Jianxing's psychological attack came. Humans were not plants. When their lives were at stake, they would naturally waver. Moreover, the Crown Prince's words happened to hit the point that they were most confused about. Yes, they were the soldiers of Tensei Province, but they were also soldiers of the Empire. It was fine if they were loyal to Her Highness, but if Her Highness Empress were to rebel, would they also follow her and become traitors? The scene quieted down for a moment. There were only the restless neighs of the horses and the heavy breathing of the soldiers. There were also the remaining drops of blood on the armor that dripped to the ground. Li Jianxing was calm and unruffled. He wasn't in a hurry. The Imperial Guards were constantly changing their formation, sealing off all possibilities of escape for the Emperor's concubine. There was still plenty of time, so he didn't mind waiting a little longer, because he wanted to destroy everything this woman had. Her pride, her power, and her loyalty. Your Highness. The Tensei general who came to support Empress looked at his comrades who had fallen to the ground and said softly, "A lowly general is not afraid of death, but a lowly general does not want to die without knowing why. A lowly general still has family." The other soldiers did not speak, but the weapons in their hands trembled slightly. Empress was protected in the center by the loyal soldiers, but now this indestructible human wall could become the shackles that imprisoned her at any time. General Tensei sighed softly. A complicated look flashed through her eyes. There was pain, confusion, sighing, and hesitation. She might have thought of the past. She had made many difficult choices in her life. She had been in pain and confusion, but she would continue to be strong. But today, after so many things had happened, she knew that she had to make an even more painful decision. Her scarred soul had begun to waver and hesitate. She even began to doubt whether her initial persistence was right. Maybe this is a punishment from God. Just like Sun Lang said, there is retribution in this world. I used to think that I could bear all the consequences, but now... Empress looked around. There were more and more Imperial Guards, and the sentries from the various prefectures were just watching. The reinforcements from Tensei Province would take a long time to arrive, and the people at the moment would most likely not be able to resist a wave of attacks from the Imperial Guards. Yes, they also have family. They're all loyal soldiers. They should not bear the name of a traitor and die. Even if they fight to the end, there is no hope. I can't escape from this situation, she bitterly sighed. There was a sharp pain in her heart, and an intense sadness swept over her. She wasn't grieving for the deaths of these people, nor was she grieving for her own fate. She was grieving for the fate of this country. If it wasn't for her support in the outside world, Sun Lang would have eventually lost his patience, and an unprecedented war would have unfolded in this ancient and glorious capital city. There would be no victor, only destroyers, and the powerful empire would have suffered the greatest loss in history. Whether Sun Lang lived or died, it did not matter because the fate of the empire had already been decided. The empire fell apart, fell into a chaotic war, and was invaded by foreign enemies. The news that the empire had lost the ability to create an imperial army had been publicly announced by the emperor. The chaotic empire had lost its future, and its tragic fate had already been decided. The Empress of Earth would definitely suffer an endless calamity and be destroyed by the flames of war for many, many years. All of this, in the end, was because of the plan of losing control of the great desolate mountain. Empress gripped her collar tightly and painfully examined and questioned herself. Was I wrong? Did I regret it? And no wonder Sun Lang laughed. She also felt that all of this was too ridiculous. Forget it. Forget it. This is the bitter wine that we brewed with our own hands. Me, Li Jiansheng, and the Emperor. Today's matter was the choice of the Li clan. The Li clan's empire should come to an end. If we can't stop it, let's welcome the destruction together. At least the soldiers were innocent. Empress was just about to surrender when she heard the general of Tensei Province say in a trembling voice, "Your Highness, General, a lowly general just wants to ask you one thing. Did you really rebel?" This question was like a cardiac stimulant, pushing into her heart that was on the verge of death. Empress was refreshed. No, only this one. She could swear that from the beginning to the end, she loved her country deeply. For this reason, she could make difficult choices. For this reason, she could bear a heavy burden. And for this reason, she could never regret. Almost without thinking, Empress subconsciously said, "No." The general gritted his teeth and said, "Is this true?" "Yes, it's true. With the Empress of Heaven as my witness, I have never betrayed my country. It was like this in the past, and it will be like this today. Everything I do is to protect this country. There were no vicious curses or hurried excuses. She spoke very slowly, and her tone was very calm. This was enough. This was enough. In that case, we didn't die without knowing why. The general laughed in a low voice. How great is it to die for the country? He suddenly raised the spear in his hand and said sternly, "We are willing to surrender. General of Tensei is here. His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince. Please come forward and answer." Li Jiansheng was overjoyed when he heard this. He subconsciously looked forward, wanting to see the woman being betrayed by her confidant and reduced to a prisoner. However, in the next moment, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. He saw the remaining soldiers of Tensei province suddenly spurt their horses and throw the spear in their hands. Dozens of lightning bolts pierced toward him. "Your Highness, be careful." The elite Imperial guards beside him held up their shields and protected the Crown Prince behind them. However, the spears thrown by the reverse fate return technique were so powerful that they forcibly pierced through the Imperial Guard shields and almost pierced His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince's body. Li Jiansheng was furious and roared, "Kill them all! Kill them all!" Someone beside him asked, "Why don't we fire the crossbows?" Li Jiansheng slapped his face. "Fire your mother's crossbows! Capture them alive! Capture them alive!" The remaining soldiers of the Heavenly Policy Mansion laughed wildly and pulled out their swords and sabers. They shouted loudly and charged toward the direction of the Vermilion Bird Avenue. The Imperial Army's sudden attack was like a vast and mighty river pouncing on a small boat in a storm. Perhaps a wave would be enough to wipe out these stubborn bandits. The Tensei Province field officer with ordinary status and low rank roared loudly as he led Empress to break through the encirclement. He wasn't a famous general and couldn't be compared to Qin Xiong and the others. However, at this moment, he was carrying out his true mission. As a warrior, he was carrying out his final belief in the intersection of iron and blood. "Your Highness Empress," as he wantonly killed, he said sternly. A lowly general joined the army at 15 years old and was fortunate to be under the general's tutelage. His talent is mediocre and he has made little contributions. Today, he is only a small field officer. However, his country is in trouble. A great hero can die for the country, and a small field officer also doesn't care about his own life. Today, I am willing to die for the general. The Imperial Guards rushed over from both sides. There were Tensei Province soldiers on both sides who didn't care about their lives and blocked them to fight for a chance for their general to break through the encirclement. Empress gritted his teeth and waved his large spear left and right as he fought side by side with the unknown field officer. Other than the deafening battle cries, there was only the field officer's resolute shouts mixed with a shred of fear and unease. "Your Highness, please allow me to report. A lowly general and his comrades are going to the Yellow Springs today to repay His Majesty's kindness and also to help His Highness overcome all obstacles and protect this country. Since we are not far from the underworld, a lowly general will gather his old subordinates, set up camp, and wait for His Highness' arrival. The living have passed away, and the dead have come. When the time comes, we will ask His Highness about today's funeral. In the Yellow Springs, everything in the world is clear. There should be no lies or deceit. If what His Highness said today is false, then we will turn into malicious spirits and ask for His Highness' life back in the Yang realm. Remember this well." After he finished speaking, he let out a loud roar, and the warhorse beneath him mustered up its last bit of courage, madly galloping forward. The military officer brandished his sword to kill, and in that instant, he had suffered countless injuries. He mustered up all the strength in his body, and with a desperate sweep, he caught the dozens of spears that were thrusting at him. With a roar, he pushed back the dense spear formation. A glimmer of hope appeared. The Emperor's concubine rushed through the crack. He didn't leave any promises or words of thanks. Li Jiansheng behind him shouted, "Frightening dragon crossbow! Aim!" Then Empress heard a soft sound. It was followed by a series of shrill screams that sounded like the crying of ghosts. She saw a storm whistling past from the left, leaving a deep trench in the ground in front of the Imperial Square. The frightening dragon crossbow was not aimed at her. But the fierce wind created by this killing weapon was also a powerful attack. At this time, she didn't have the Tianyuan saber to protect her, and she was exhausted. There was no way she could block it. Emperor's body floated up and then fell forward heavily. She spat out a mouthful of blood. It was a failure. She used all her strength to support herself and wanted to stand up, but several hooks had already flown over and bound her hands and feet. She struggled with all her strength, but she was powerless. The most powerful woman in the world fell to the ground in a sorry state. She heard Li Jianqing's proud and wild laughter. She felt the increasingly rapid rumbling sounds in the direction of the imperial palace. She seemed to see the end of the country's future. Unfortunately, those good men had still lost their lives in vain. Many people had sacrificed their lives in vain. Not only them, but also those people in the past 2 years, and in the great desolate mountain, those 300,000 soldiers and Sun Lang. Sun Lang. Everything had still turned out like this. It was really a failure. She activated her mental cultivation method, intending to end herself. She didn't want to be ridiculed and humiliated by Li Jianqing. She even more didn't want to see what would happen in the future. Perhaps she couldn't bear to see the end of the empire, or perhaps it was only because she was ashamed to see Sun Lang. She really didn't want to see Sun Lang in that kind of situation. But at this time, a fierce wind howled in the sky. Several fierce storms that were not inferior to the frightening dragon crossbow shot fell from the sky. Immediately, there was the roar of artillery fire. Thick smoke and fierce flames erupted at the same time. Someone rushed down with the fierce wind. Empress only felt her body lighten and flew into the sky like she was riding on a cloud. In a daze, she heard a conversation. "Are you sure we want to save her? We have to figure out what happened." On the ground, Li Jianqing was helped up by the imperial guards. The earth-shattering battle formation almost scared him to death. After calming down from his shock, His Imperial Highness the Crown Prince stomped his feet and cursed angrily. The Lihua Kingdom actually dares to pull the whiskers of the Empire. "Men, go and surround the Siguan. I want to see what kind of bear's heart and leopard's courage those old hairy people ate." Chapter 1180. With a gust of wind, Empress was suspended in the air and dragged off into the distance. The wounds on her body were throbbing with pain, and her limbs and bones were sore and swollen from exerting too much force. Today, General Tensei was in a sorry state. She had completely lost her composure, but she truly did not care about this. She allowed Zhao Yunlong to grab her as if he was holding a fan of pork. She did not resist, did not speak, did not struggle, and did not make a sound. Her limbs hung down and her eyes were lifeless, but her heart was in turmoil. Countless scenes flashed through her mind like a revolving lantern. When she was young, the Emperor had taught her martial arts and how to read. He had carried her in his arms to handle court affairs. He had told her about the ways of controlling people, brought her on hunting expeditions, and brought her to court. He had told her that people were divided into 3, 6, and 9 ranks, and that she was destined to be noble from birth. When she grew up, the Sky Demon attacked. As a member of the imperial family, she donned armor and went into battle. For her father, the emperor, and the country, she bathed in blood and fought. She had experienced the machinations of the imperial palace and had experienced bloody battles. The elite education that the emperor had poured his heart and soul into had shown results early on. Relying on her talent and hard work, she had already grown into a person who truly stood above others. Iron blood and decisiveness, abandonment and sacrifice. Those who achieved great things did not care about trifles, and those at the top did not have any taboos. The emperor's teachings over the years had nourished her and silently changed her 3 views and thoughts. She used justice and severity to command her army, and she used tactics and darkness to ensure her own power. She had done many things right and also many things wrong, but in her heart, there was no longer any compassion or weakness. She had hardened her heart long ago. This was the education she had received from a young age. It was not that she could not distinguish between right and wrong. She also knew right and wrong. But the matters of the world could not only be determined by right and wrong. Right and wrong were only appearances. Beneath these appearances were the key issues that she should focus on. This was the principle and creed by which she conducted herself. And then she met Sun Lang. Sun Lang. Reality was so mysterious, and fate was so changeable. Who could have imagined that two different souls from two different worlds would have the possibility of meeting? She thought of the past. In the extremely complicated sword array catalog, beside Jia Ying's corpse, in front of the back earth sword, a short-haired man dressed in strange clothes opened his eyes in a daze. She recalled the bits and pieces of her interactions with Sun Lang. At first, she had only treated him as a temporary vessel, but his tenacity and aptitude had attracted her attention. That cowardly and weak fellow had actually adapted to the cruel battlefield and kept his heart. He came from another world, a country completely different from the Empire. He had a brain full of strange ideas and rebellious thoughts that were enough to wipe out an entire race 1,000 times over. She couldn't help but be attracted to him. This person was really different. His many ideas, his many suggestions, his tenacity, his generosity. He was really different from the people of the Empire. But it was precisely because he was different that he had attracted a fatal disaster. She remembered the past. On the night before the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain, it was the first time she had been unable to sleep. She could still remember the emotions she had lost control of that night. She had made countless decisions to abandon and abandon. Her heart should have been as hard as stone. But on that night, she had once again tasted the feeling of being about to lose. It was as if she had become a weak and helpless little girl, about to lose the thing she loved the most. But this was for the Empire. She convinced herself like this. She had made countless decisions and choices, and this time was nothing out of the ordinary. It should have been like this, but it was not like this. The failure of the Great Desolate Mountain had changed the trajectory of everything. The Empire had lost a great number of elites, and had even sown the seeds of unrest. She did her best to convince herself that this was not wrong. This decision was not wrong. The reason it had gone wrong was because of mistake and an accident, not because of karma or retribution. She gritted her teeth and followed her heart. No matter if it was setbacks or tribulations, no matter if it was criticism or ridicule, nothing could stop her from moving forward. She and Sun Lang had long become enemies. He had also become the greatest variable that threatened the Empire. She had vowed to do her best to eliminate this variable and win the future for the Empire. But the ferocious face that the Emperor had revealed that night had dealt a great blow to her. In just over 10 days, the Crown Prince, the Holy Sword, and the disguise were too much for the eye to take in. When the trust and tacit understanding no longer existed, she began to investigate the father she had once respected and loved the most. Then she was shocked to discover that the Emperor had done too many things behind her back over the years. At that time, she could still convince herself that no matter what, she had to fight for the Empire, no matter who the opponent was, no matter what he planned to do. But this kind of persistence seemed so laughable now. In the Golden Palace, the Emperor was hysterical, completely revealing his cold and cruel face. He had exposed the Empire's most fatal weakness. He had planned to use the remnant soul of the Sky Demon to take over the bodies of the ministers. His crazy actions were enough to completely destroy all the credibility of the imperial family and put the Empire on the verge of destruction. His plan was so decisive, cruel, and swift that the moment he made his move, it was so earth-shattering that it was difficult to resist, and Empress was almost powerless to do anything about it. She was almost powerless to do anything about it. Yes, even if she did everything she could to cooperate with Sun Lang to defeat the Emperor, she would not be able to change the general trend. She would not be able to create a new production line for the Imperial Army for the Empire. She would not be able to prevent today's matter from being revealed to the world. She would not be able to stop the political credibility of the Leaf family from going bankrupt. In the foreseeable future, the country she loved would face great turmoil. The peace and stability that the heroes of Tianyuan had painstakingly won would no longer exist. All the efforts, perseverance, and sacrifices she had made so far would become meaningless. And the most ironic thing was that the direct cause of all this came from a decision she had made. If she had made a different choice before the battle of the great desolate mountain, thinking of this, her heart began to fiercely twitch. That sharp pain was perhaps the taste of regret. It was she who had caused all this today. She had made the wrong decision and caused the death of many, many people. The many images in her mind became more and more chaotic, changing faster and faster. She recalled the eyes of the first person she had executed. She recalled the moment she had parted with Sun Lang before the battle of the Great Desolate Mountain. She recalled that just now, that ordinary officer had led the men she did not know the name of to their deaths, all because of one sentence she had said. So many people had trusted her, and so many souls had she let down. In the midst of her long thoughts, she suddenly felt her body sink, followed by a sharp pain all over her body. She had been thrown to the hard ground. Zhao Yunlong would not give her a good look. Look who we have captured. A traitor. When a person like Chao Patao was harsh, it was really harsh. Empress did not even bother to struggle. She saw all the pain as her own punishment. She lay on the ground in a very humiliating position, not saying a word. Sister, Princess Pingyang cried out in alarm and rushed forward to help her up. She was so distressed that tears fell. Sister, you're injured. What was going on? Where's the Tianyuan saber? Thick and mighty inner breath flowed into her body, nourishing her injured meridians and giving birth to new strength. The Emperor's concubine raised her head and looked at the beautiful face that was almost the same as her own. She bitterly smiled. She murmured, "Sister, I'm sorry." This was the first time she had spoken to her cowardly sister in such a weak manner. This apology was something she would never have said in the past. However, perhaps even the Emperor's concubine herself didn't know what she was apologizing for. Pingyang was surprised at first, and then she gently pulled her sister into her arms and said softly, "It's okay. Now is not the time for sisterly love." Zhao Yunlong coldly interrupted this warm moment and said stiffly, "I should have watched you die, but I heard that Tensei Province and Shinto Province have rebelled together. This made me curious." She said concisely, "Why are you and Li Jiansheng the only ones fighting? What about Sun Lang?" Empress glanced at Zhao Feihuang and Lu Shujin, who had unkind expressions. Most of the women present had old grudges with her. She smiled bitterly and said slowly, "They are all trapped in the Golden Palace." She tried her best to explain the cause and effect of the matter in the most concise terms. Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even if they had been mentally prepared, they were still shocked by this earth-shattering development. Why is the Emperor in such a hurry to make a move? Zhao Feihuang murmured, "This doesn't make sense. It seems to be in a hurry, but if he is fully prepared, he can catch Sun Lang off guard. After all, no one expected that he would make a move as soon as he recovered from his injuries." Lu Shujin looked at Empress. "I am more curious about what you plan to do." Everyone's eyes fell on her again. How should they put it? When they thought that Sun Lang had pinned his hopes of breaking the situation on this woman, it really made everyone's mood very complicated. Empress was silent for a moment, and then said resolutely, "Please send me back to Tensei Province." For a moment, the air was quiet, and no one spoke. Then, Zhao Yunlong said coldly, "Are you sure you want to do this? I'm willing to bear all of this." Empress said faintly, "I know the consequences. After going through a dilemma, I was hesitant and confused, but in the end, I still made the right choice no matter what the price is." She looked at Princess Pingyang and said softly, "This is the responsibility of the royal family." Princess Pingyang said uneasily, "Sister, why don't—" Empress shook her head. "No, you stay here. I can do it alone." She stopped her sister's suggestion with a firm look, and then looked at Zhao Yunlong and said calmly and firmly, "Please send me back to Tensei Province. I can't thank you enough." Zhao Yunlong stared at her for a few seconds, then looked away and said, "Mao Zi, send her back." Courier landed on the side and said unhappily, "I am not a troop carrier." Before she could finish complaining, General Tensei bowed deeply and said in a deep voice, "Please." These three words were said smoothly. They came from the mouth of the proudest, noblest, and most valiant woman in the world. Everyone was stunned for a moment, and even Courier was a little stunned. This arrogant guy was stunned for a moment and stammered, "You don't have to do this. I mean," she opened the cockpit in a hurry. "You can come in?" "Okay." Empress walked forward calmly and squeezed in. "I need to rest for a while." Watching the blazing angel roar and rush into the sky, Zhao Yunlong and the others' expressions were very complicated. "I kind of admire her," Lu Shujin suddenly said. "She can still have such a temperament and determination under such circumstances." Zhao Yunlong said indifferently, "Yes, she wants to protect the elite ministers in the Golden Palace and buy time for Sun Lang. So she has to find a way to activate the Forbidden Palace's formation. The best way to force the Forbidden Army to activate the formation is to lead an army to rebel and attack the Imperial City. However, the price she has to pay is the collapse of Tensei Province that she has painstakingly built. All the innocent soldiers who trusted her and followed her will be branded as traitors and will die in the following battle. Perhaps they will not be able to make a comeback even after death. And just now, she witnessed a group of soldiers from Tensei Province die for her. But today, the faith she once believed in and protected has collapsed. Under such circumstances, she can still grit her teeth and make such a decision, disregarding all her reputation and efforts, and leading the soldiers who trusted and followed her to death without hesitation. Chao Patao looked up at the sky and said calmly, "I kind of admire her." Inluo suddenly said, "We also want to help." "No." Lu Shujin and Zhao Yunlong rejected at the same time. "Just with the firearms you brought?" Zhao Yunlong said, "You don't even have heavy artillery. How much noise can you make?" Now that Shinto province is also rebelling, Li Jiansheng is spreading the news everywhere, and Tensei province is finally taking the blame. "You don't have to get involved." Zhang Yinluo said, "Of course, just with the firearms I brought won't be enough, but I have a plan." Zhao Yunlong said calmly, "Tell me about it first. I'll listen." Inluo took out a map from his sleeve and said, "We lack enough heavy firearms, and we can't risk it in person as Shinto province. But there's a place here that must have enough firepower. We can borrow some if the situation is urgent." Zhao Yunlong looked at the map and saw that Inluo was pointing at the Sea Embassy in the capital. It was where the Embassy of the Divine Power of Flames was located. "I remember that you traveled to the Kingdom of Fire in your early years." Zhao Yunlong said casually, "Is it appropriate to trick the Russians like that?" Inluo sighed. "I'm a citizen of the Imperium. If possible, I like to see the two countries live in harmony forever." However, the Emperor has revealed the big secret. With the ambition and obsession of the Burning Flame Order, they will definitely take action against Hutu. So, there's no time to think too much. Let's take care of the Imperium first. Only great strength could intimidate the enemy and keep the soldiers at bay. At this moment, only by breaking the stalemate and helping Sun Lang succeed could the Imperium's strength be preserved to the greatest extent. It was obvious what to do. Zhao Yunlong nodded and asked, "What's the specific plan?" Inluo thought for a moment and said, "First of all, Chapter 1181. You can drop me off here." In front of Tensei Province, the blazing angel landed. The cockpit opened, and Empress jumped out. The guards in front of the door saluted in a hurry, but Empress only waved her hand in reply. She turned around and bowed to Courier solemnly. "Thank you. Please go back. The capital is in turmoil, and the situation is changing. You must be careful." Mao Mei was silent for a moment before she responded with a military salute. "Before, you were just a disgusting politician," she said. "But now, you have become a real soldier. In any case, I admire a warrior who faces death with equanimity." Empress smiled calmly. I'm just a pathetic person who has made an irreparable mistake, but I don't know what the problem is. I can only try my best to fix it for peace of mind. I don't deserve your admiration. After today, we may never meet again. I hope that there will be no war between Li-Fire and Hutu, and that innocent people will not lose their lives. But that is not something I can worry about. War, Courier murmured in a low voice. This word was actually the most terrifying thing in the world. It brought about countless deaths, bloodshed, parting, and sorrow. It destroyed all that was beautiful and caused innocent people to lose their lives. However, for Mao Mei, who was born bloodthirsty and warlike, war was not so abhorrent. Or rather, as the top fighting force of the Order of Flames, she had always longed for a real war. The Li-Fire Kingdom of Light and Heat would challenge the strongest in the world and bring infinite light and heat to the world. She put on a slightly hideous smile. Actually, I'm looking forward to it. Empress was not angry. She simply shook her head casually. But I'm afraid that the war you're looking forward to might not go as you wish. The Mao girl spoke the Empire's language very well, but she was still a Russian after all, so she wasn't that good yet. She couldn't understand the Empress concubine's slightly awkward words, so Kirill frowned and asked, "What did you say?" The Empress concubine only smiled mysteriously. "Perhaps you will see it in the near future." "That's ridiculous," Courier said unhappily. "I'm leaving." General Tensei nodded. "I won't be seeing you off. Goodbye." The death messenger took 2 steps back. Mao Mei was about to return to the sky when she suddenly remembered something. "All right." She stared at the Imperial General in front of her through the lowered visor and said slowly, "Perhaps I shouldn't have said too much, but after we part today, do you have any words for a certain person?" The Emperor's concubine was startled. In an instant, her cold and solemn face was shaken. The frost melted and spring returned to the earth. Even if it was only for an instant, the Grand General's face had an additional touch of shocking charm. It was as if nearly 10 years of feelings had merged into this moment. "No need," she said softly. "He understands." While Curry was still stunned by the stunning beauty and grace that the Emperor's concubine exuded at this moment, the Heavenly Strategies General had already returned to his original valiance and stubbornness. The Emperor's concubine turned around and stepped through the gates of the Heavenly Strategies Palace under the gazes of the soldiers, who were mixed with uneasiness and relief. The officials and generals left behind in the mansion came forward to greet her. Everyone was relieved, but they also had endless questions and uneasiness. It had been such a long time, and it was enough for them to hear some bad news and rumors. "Blow the horn, send a message, ignite the cannon, and activate the Star Stone," Empress said. "Gather all the people we can gather. I want to talk to everyone." At the same time, Courier, who was flying at full speed, returned to Shinto province. When I looked down from the sky, there was already some commotion in the imperial capital. I even felt that there was a powerful imperial army aiming at me. It seems that the strong people of the empire were not completely wiped out by the court assembly. Courier jumped out of the cockpit and then said, "The woman in Tensei province seems to be going all out. Should we also make some preparations?" After all, Li Jianshang said that Tensei province and Shinto province are in chaos together, and it is inevitable that there will be bandits with bad intentions who will take advantage of the situation. So, "Hey, what are you doing?" She saw Zhao Yunlong and the others sitting around a table, fiddling with something. When she got closer, they all turned around at the same time. The scene gave Mao Mei a fright. They were all wearing gas masks, black helmets, red glass lenses, and the largest respirator that was shaped like a pig's mouth. They looked very wild. Inluo also had one and said in a muffled voice, "We are doing some protective work. Do you want to bring one too? It's better to be prepared. I brought a lot this time to the imperial capital." Courier looked carefully and recognized that these gas masks were the handiwork of the divine kingdom of raging flames. After all, Russia's firearms were the best in the world. In addition to the rumbling guns and cannons, they also had hard nuclear weapons, such as flamethrowers. In the battlefield where thick smoke was everywhere and the air was polluted, a gas mask was very necessary. But this was the Empire. She wondered, Why should I bring this? Will the enemy release poisonous smoke? Will they set fire? Have they confirmed that there is an enemy attack? Then we can't passively defend. We should take the initiative to attack. Everyone looked at each other and then laughed awkwardly. There was a mix of whispered discussion such as, "Hey, I seem to have forgotten something. Yes, she's a real Russian. Why don't we let her stay and watch the house?" Wait a minute. Mao Mei pressed her hands in the air and said with a subtle expression, "What do you want to do?" Everyone looked at Yin Luo. Yin Luo laughed dryly and said, "We're going to borrow something." Unbelievable. In the short-distance communication channel, Courier's complaints sounded again. A seraph and a sunfire paladin ransacked the embassy of Lifefire in the Empire. This is the biggest black joke of the year. If I were the ambassador to the Empire, I would definitely go crazy. Stop complaining. Yin Luo drove his power suit and quietly approached the Sea Embassy district. Because it was a foreign embassy, the architectural style here was completely different from the surrounding imperial capital and was quite easy to recognize. The buildings in the embassy district of Lifefire had helmet-like domes. Both Yin Luo and Courier found the target at a glance. Female bandit Zhang, who planned this robbery, said through the short-distance communication device, "I have asked for your opinion before. If you feel uncomfortable, you can stay out of it." So you can still do such a shocking thing without any psychological pressure. Courier said, "But I am not surprised. When you go crazy, you even dare to tear down the Palace of Gideon, let alone a small embassy." "But Akiro, I have to remind you of one thing," she said gloomily. "When the great nun knows about this, she will definitely strangle you to death." Hearing this, Yin Luo could not help but shudder. Then he immediately said, "Don't be afraid. With Sun Lang here, 100 great nuns can't even touch a finger of mine." Creel was stunned for a moment. He seemed to have thought of something and smiled strangely. "You're right. With Sun Lang around, even 100 great nuns can't get close to you. Or rather, Sun Lang only needs one finger to make 100 great nuns unable to stand up." I'm curious. After that woman was hit by Sun Lang's finger, would she still be able to keep that expressionless face of hers that had not changed for thousands of years? Yin Luo heard this, and her eyes lit up. Even a good child like her showed an expression of being moved. "Are you tempted?" "Of course not." Yin Luo hurriedly denied it and changed the topic. "Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Follow the original plan. Are you ready?" How troublesome. If it were up to me, I would just charge in and use the Blazing Angel's name to scare the ambassador. I would trick him into taking advantage of the chaos in the capital to bombard the Forbidden Palace. Who knows? Maybe he would become hot-headed and give it to me on the spot, Courier said impatiently. "If it is that convenient, why would I need your troublesome plan?" Yin Luo refuted. "No, I have already asked around. The ambassadors sent by the other countries to Hutu are all cautious and moderate. Furthermore, they're all civil servants. The ones in charge of the secret weapon storage are the combat monks of the order. Furthermore, they only follow the church's teachings and orders. Without orders, the Blazing Angel's name would not scare them." Courier said without hesitation. "Then let's just go in and rob them." Yin Luo sighed. "Who exactly is the fire dweller? Why don't you care about the lives of your fellow countrymen at all? If we attack by force, there will definitely be casualties. Attacking the Theocracy Nation is already going against my conscience. I really don't want to harm their lives. You better not do that either." She took off a strange device from behind her shoulder and placed it on the ground in front of her. Then she confirmed the angle and direction, adjusted it for a while, and nodded in satisfaction. This device was a launcher that Yin Luo made by hand. The reason why she had to make it herself was because its task was to fire a special ammunition that had never been seen before. Not only that, but it also had to achieve a delayed detonation of the ammunition and a splash effect in the center. Courier saw it clearly from the sky and asked curiously, "What is this?" "It's a firearm that I figured out myself. The cannon is short, the shooting angle is large, and the trajectory arc is high. It mainly shoots in a curve and is convenient for individual soldiers to carry and operate. As a suppressive weapon, there's almost no shooting dead angle. It can kill and injure infantry at close range, and can also cross obstacles to destroy hidden fortifications and enemies. It can fire a variety of shells. Inluo, half-squatted, took out special ammunition from the ammunition rack of the power armor and placed it next to the small cannon. I named this new weapon Mortar. With the amazing performance of the Blazing Angel's helmet, Courier saw the special shells in Inluo's hand clearly. Her expression suddenly became very interesting. Shells? You call these shells? Inluo calmly picked up a cannonball and placed it at the muzzle. He took a deep breath and said as if nothing had happened, "That's right. A non-lethal biochemical tactic actively rejects cannonballs." Chapter 1182. Courier had a complicated expression on her face when a non-lethal biochemical tactical active denial cannonball flew across the curved trajectory and landed in the Liefire embassy. Then she saw Inluo adjusting the angle with his left hand and releasing the cannonball with his right, firing from left and right at a rate of 1 cannonball per second, as if he was spasming, blanketing the entire embassy district with a blanket bombardment. Explosions echoed incessantly, and the sharp sound that streaked across the air sounded like Nurgle's laughter. Courier was a person who stood at the very top of the Order's combat ranks. Her military knowledge and vision were among the best, and with Inluo's brief demonstration, she had generally assessed the new weapon's performance and potential. With some slight modifications, the mortar could enter the war system of the Divine Right Nation and become a standard weapon of great versatility. From ordinary warriors to holy knights in power armor, from chariot legions to armed cultivators, any organization and any battlefield could make the weapon shine. However, to think that the weapon's first appearance would be for such a thing, and the victim is a citizen of the Liefire Nation. If such a report was submitted, even the Divine Emperor would not know whether to laugh or cry. In the blink of an eye, the embassy was shrouded in the breath of hell. Although it was called non-lethal biochemical tactical active denial cannonball, there are different types of cannonballs. Some would directly explode in the air and cause a large area of sputtering. Some would drill through walls and windows and explode inside the building. Some would explode on contact. Some would delay, and some would explode by induction. It was clear that Zhang Yinluo had used a large number of secret flame spells and firearm components from the Liefire Nation, which became the nightmare of the embassy. For a moment, cries of terror and pain echoed incessantly. Whether it was those who rushed out of the building, those who hid in the embassy, those who panicked and ran without knowing where to go, or those who tried to retaliate, they were destined to remember this day for the rest of their lives. Such an impactful memory was no less than witnessing the invasion of the Burning Legion with their own eyes. Those pitiful mortals were running wildly in all directions. Some were howling, some were vomiting, their bodies drenched in the terrible substance, and they were screaming at the top of their lungs. At this moment, no matter if they were rich or poor, male or female, old or young, all humans displayed the same characteristics. Life had never been so equal before. Courier spoke faintly in the short-distance communication channel. "Don't even talk about ransacking the embassy. If the great nun sees you now, she'll definitely strangle you to death." "Stop making sarcastic remarks," Inluo said grumpily. "Observe carefully. Are there any big shots worth paying attention to coming out? They are the targets of our trip." Courier magnified the vision of the helmet and carefully observed everyone who was in a sorry state. After a moment, she shook her head and said, "I haven't found anything yet. Let alone the ambassador. I haven't even seen any military officers. Those who ran out should be some ordinary staff." Zhang Yinluo said casually, "It makes sense. The cultivators and officials of the Shangquan Kingdom are almost all proficient in ballistics and geometry. They are well-trained and will soon realize that this is a man-made bombardment and try to lock onto my position." According to the diplomatic agreement between the two countries, the Liefire Embassy will not have more than 5 mechs for security purposes. Your mission is to eliminate them as soon as possible. Do you understand? Courier frowned and said, "Don't give me orders. You don't have the right to do so." Zhang Yinluo continued to fire while half-heartedly saying, "Yes, yes, yes. Please, the great messenger of death, Lady Courier, annihilate the invaders. Is that okay?" What answered her was the sound of a hurricane descending from the sky. The flaming tail of the seraph pierced through the sky and crashed down like a meteor. 3 mechs rushed out in a battle formation. As military officers of the embassy, they were all elites of the Leaf Fire. As veteran soldiers, they were very familiar with the screams coming from above. "It's the seraph?" The 3 of them raised their heads in shock. Even if they were well-trained warriors, when faced with the powerless dive attack of their own nation supreme, they still showed a moment of confusion and helplessness. Curry put away the heat cannon and microwave gun. His left arm reached out with the impact sword, and his right arm expanded with the vibration wave shield. He directly smashed the first mech, and the powerful impact directly knocked the opponent unconscious. The remaining 2 instinctively pulled the trigger, but the standard blasters equipped with the mechs could not break through the defense of the vibration shield. Courier suddenly rushed forward and cut one of the blasters in half. The shield in his right hand was smashed into the body of another mech 3 down, she said in the short-range communication channel, and, before he could finish his sentence, intense flames surrounded the blazing angel, and a powerful explosion shook the surroundings. The shockwave swept up the sand and stones in all directions, and then the smoke dispersed. The gorgeous, blazing angel armor put down the colorful shield, and there was a trace of anger in her voice. I said, no matter what, pulling the trigger on the blazing angel, the highest-ranking blazing angel in the battle order, is a very disrespectful act. Yinluo complained. You already attacked, and you don't allow others to fight back. Courier did not answer, but more intense and dense explosions followed. Yinluo listened carefully. She had studied in the Leaf Fire Nation for a long time, and her talent in firearms was extremely shocking. The skill of determining the number of firearms through the sound of explosions was only the basic content of the compulsory course. Soon, she also realized that something was wrong. Holy fire-propelled grenade, dragon flame stream cannon, white phosphorus shotgun, she said in surprise. These are all high-damage weapons. Evenly fire can only be equipped by the elite troops. According to the diplomatic agreement between the 2 countries, they can appear in the list of armed forces of the embassy for the purpose of self-defense. Even if they secretly hid them, they wouldn't take them out so decisively. And the target of the attack is the seraph armor of our country. What is going on? You finally realized it? Ms. Zhang. Death Messenger put away the sword and shield, and the weapon modules on the shoulders, waist, arms, and other parts quickly opened up. Precise shooting, suppressive fire, and explosive bombardment, its body hovered in the air at a low altitude, vented the firepower with extremely high mobility, and cleared the firing points one after another. In the communication channel, while fighting fiercely, she sneered and said, "Every abnormal thing has an internal reason and reason. From this round of firepower attack, I smell the smell of ruthlessness and exasperation. The person who gave the order to attack without caring about anything must be hiding a big secret, and he definitely doesn't want me to know." So after seeing the seraph appear, he hysterically ordered to open fire. Yinluo suddenly stood up and said anxiously, "Change of plan?" "Of course." Courier said coldly, "This secret, the more he doesn't want me to know, the more I want to know. Time is of the essence. We have to finish this quickly. Maybe he is burning the documents right now." After saying that, the seraph made a circle in the air, put away the firearms, and took out the sword and shield again. The ejector spat out powerful flames, and the gorgeous combat equipment spread out the steel wings. It raised the sword and shield, and like a real swordsman, it directly crashed into the majestic and heavy main building of the embassy. Let Zhao Yunlong do it too. In the dull roar, rubble flew everywhere, and a big hole in the embassy collapsed. Inluo outside raised her right arm, and a red signal flare rushed into the sky. Zhao Yunlong, who was lying in ambush on the other side of the embassy area, raised his rifle and jumped over the high wall with Lu Shujin and quietly rushed into the Lihua embassy. Inluo put the mortar aside and said to herself, "I can help, but Sun Lang said that unless it is absolutely necessary, don't use the seraph. If I only rely on this set of power armor." She thought for a moment and seemed to have thought of a good idea, and then a conflicted expression appeared on her face. "Forget it," she sighed. "Anyway, just the 2 crimes just now are enough for the great nun to strangle me to death. Do whatever you want." She took out the chain axe, pulled out the grenade gun, and rushed to the gate of the embassy area with big strides. The guard at the gate had already hidden somewhere to vomit. She split open the iron gate with her axe and rushed in unstoppably. A string of fluent Russian words came out of her mouth. Her soft and pleasant voice was modified by the masked voice changer. It became very violent and domineering, sounding very Russian. "Praise the holy fire. Cleanse all sins," she roared. "In the name of the divine king, the punishment of fire is sent to the betrayers and rebels. Now I order you to put down your weapons. Those who are deceived must not help the evil. The court only punishes the guilty. Do not make mistakes. Put down your weapons. Those who resist will be regarded as rebels and will be stripped of their church records. Even their family members will be punished by fire, and they will be thrown into the ice hell forever." She walked in the power armor with her head held high. She held the chain axe in one hand and the grenade gun in the other, and opened fire at the sky. She read the Inferno inscription and the divine king's admonition in a stern voice, and sternly criticized and warned the rebels who had gone astray. It had to be said that her awe-inspiring and fearless look was too much like the court. Her whole person exuded a sense of sternness that said, "I want to see if you are loyal or not." A military officer in a power armor rushed out from the side, but he did not dare to open fire. Inluo turned to look at him. Although there was a mask between them, the poor military officer could still see the examination of his soul through the evil red goggles. "Are you going to open fire at me?" Inluo strode toward him and asked sternly. "Stubborn fool, let me ask you, are you going to attack the adjudicator of the court? Are you going to give up your faith? Are you going to betray the church and His Majesty the Divine King?" The pitiful military official took several steps back and almost sat on the ground. As a burly Russian, in front of this strict and cruel judge, his voice even carried a trace of sobbing. No, I was only carrying out orders. I didn't know you were a member of the judicial court." He stammered a few words and suddenly said agitatedly, "It's all Brother Makarov's doing. It's Brother Makarov's orders. He said you are the traitors, and all of this is for the greater good of the theocracy." Makarov. This name belonged to the Lihua ambassador in the empire. Inluo had inquired about it beforehand. "Get up." Inluo kicked the man's gun to the side, and his tone was still harsh. "Sinner, I'll give you a chance to perform meritorious deeds. Call out to those deceived and pitiful people who are stubbornly resisting. Tell them to put down their weapons and don't go astray because of Makarov's lies." It had to be said that Inluo's acting was very good. His acting was very vivid. Although the military officers of the embassy carried out Makarov's orders, they still had doubts in their hearts. After all, they clearly saw that the target was actually a seraph. Seraph treason? What kind of joke was this? They already had such doubts. But when the judges of the court appeared, they realized that everything was just Makarov's despicable lies. He was the traitor? With the Seraph's reputation and Inluo's acting, the situation was actually under control. Of course, Courier's attack and Zhao Lu's secret infiltration had overthrown most of the most determined rebels. This was also a major factor. Even as Inluo was reprimanding the lost ones and thinking about what to do with them, Courier rushed out from the collapsed ruins. "Akiro, I didn't find Makarov, but I found his secret room and found something." The Russian girl's voice lost its usual cold arrogance and sounded a little uneasy. I found something, she muttered. You should see. Holy fire above. There seems to be trouble. Chapter 1183. Holy fire above. Courier murmured. Seems like we're in trouble. Judging from her voice, the ferocious and meritorious seraph seemed to be a little distracted. Inluo was taken aback. She had never heard the Russian girl speak in such a weak tone. Her voice was greatly shaken, as if she had really seen something unbelievable in the embassy. Okay, she answered and then turned to look at the confused and uneasy captives behind her. She swung the axe in her hand a few times and said, Reason and obedience have saved you for the time being. I will record your timely surrender in the report. It will be an important testimony. Now stand by here. Remember, you only have one chance in our tolerance. The Russians, who had taken off their armor and weapons, but were still burly, nodded like chicks pecking at rice. They did not have any fierceness and looked extremely weak. Courier looked on coldly. She did not complain about Inluo's impersonation because this guy had done too many outrageous things today. And the problem was obviously not this. Follow me. She pushed away the broken stone pillars and cleared the ruins along the way, revealing the intact structure of the house. Passing through several tall doors, the two shuttled through the main building of the embassy and came to the ambassador's office. Zhao Yunlong and Lu Shujin were guarding inside. There was a pile of documents on the table. Although the two could not understand the tadpole-like Ignis language, they could realize the seriousness of the matter from Courier's previous wavering. Inluo walked quickly to the table and quickly flipped through the things found by Courier. Our ambassador left in a hurry, Courier said coldly. After he saw us, he only had time to destroy the most important documents with a thermite incendiary bomb. After giving the order to attack us, he fled. Although I don't know where he is hiding, the rigid confidentiality methods and careless work habits of the officials of theocracy have helped. She pointed at the deformed safe, bookshelves, drawers, and filing cabinets. I found some clues from the embassy's daily documents. Inluo flipped through the documents, and his voice gradually became bewildered. These, Zhao Yunlong frowned. What does it say? Inluo's expression gradually changed. She was also like Kirill. Her face was filled with disbelief. They pieced together a conjecture from these scattered documents, a conjecture that no one dared to believe. These are the daily work reports of the embassy, the recent secret reports. Inluo said with difficulty. The embassy has secretly accumulated an excessive amount of forbidden weapons and equipment over the past few years. Although these are unspoken rules, they are only used as a precaution. Normally, they are locked in an embassy's secret chamber and would never be opened. But in the past few days, Makarov used the excuse of inspecting the equipment to open the secret chamber several times and received the agreement of several military officers and cultivators. Did he take out those powerful weapons? The ones he used to deal with us today? Zhao Yunlong asked. What does this mean? Maybe the capital is in turmoil these days, and he felt the situation is delicate, so he took out these weapons in advance. Chao Patao stopped here. She also realized that it did not make sense. Inluo glanced at her. You've also realized where the problem lies. As the Li Huo ambassador, if it's just for self-defense, he doesn't have the right to take out such powerful weapons in such a delicate situation. Because, to put it bluntly, these things are just psychological comforts. There's almost no need for them to be used. If they're used, it will definitely be a big matter, just like how ordinary people hide bows and crossbows. She took out another document. Look at this. In the past half-month, the embassy has received dozens of Lihua nationals, and the affairs they dealt with were about returning to their country. According to the written records, these Lihua nationals have left the capital in carriages and went to Mingzhou, and the embassy arranged for them to be sent away. But in another document, the working hours of the cleaners and cultivators have significantly increased, and the consumption of food has also increased. In this one, the plethora of tadpole words and the trivial things that Inluo mentioned made Zhao Yunlong frown. She felt an inexplicable irritation, as if she realized that something was not right. She reached out and interrupted Inluo's explanation. Just get to the conclusion. Although this is only some circumstantial evidence, combined with the inexplicable hostile attitude of the ambassador of Lihua today and his guilty behavior of burning the documents, we can make a bold inference that is absurd but reasonable. Inluo glanced at Courier, took a deep breath, and said with difficulty, I suspect that Makarov received some kind of order from Lihua. The person who sent the order to him seemed to have foreseen the changes in the Imperial City of Earth today and asked Makarov to cooperate with the execution of some special order. For this reason, he opened a secret vault, took out the prohibited weapons, and gathered the secret personnel hidden in all parts of the capital, organized and armed them, and waited for today. Zhao Yunlong and Lu Shujin's expressions changed at the same time. What did you say? Chao Patao finally understood why Courier looked absent-minded. She took a step forward and said in a low voice, The Emperor chose to take action today, which was extremely abrupt. Even Sun Lang was caught off guard. None of the civil and military officials in the court expected it. How could Lihua have foreseen it? This is ridiculous. Inluo sighed. I can't believe it either. But not only these documents, but also this and this. These details all indicate one thing: they were prepared. Lu Shujin asked, What about the direct evidence? What does Lihua want to do? Inluo shook his head. All direct evidence should have been burned. Makarov's goal and the person behind him, we have no idea. But it's clear that if this guess is true, then this matter will be more turbulent than you and I can imagine. They had thought that the Emperor directly exposed the destruction of the Imperial Army's production line in the palace, which would inevitably arouse the greed and malice of the four superpowers. But that was, after all, in the future. It must be known that the Empire was still powerful. Although it could not produce another Imperial army, the existing inventory and weapons were still enough to dominate the world. As long as they could help Sun Lang to quickly and steadily pacify the chaos, maintain the order, and preserve the strength to the maximum extent, it would be enough to deter the other countries, buy time to breathe, and find the path for the future. But what was going on? If Lihua had really foreseen the turmoil of Hutu, what did it mean? They frowned and felt deeply uneasy. Sun Lang did not reveal too much information to them, so they could not analyze and infer more. No matter what, this is just a wild guess. Zhao Yunlong said decisively. But if this is true, the consequences will be very serious. We must verify this speculation and inform Sun Lang as soon as possible. If our speculation is correct, today's matter is much more dangerous than we thought. We can't let Sun Lang be kept in the dark. Lu Shujin said, Makarov, this is the only living intelligence left. We have to find a way to make him talk. First, we have to find him. Inluo picked up the blaster on the table. The resistance in the embassy should be the military officers of the order. The people Makarov secretly gathered should be the main force of the secret operation. We have to interrogate them first and open the embassy's secret vault to see if we can locate Makarov through tracking equipment. She was just about to move when Chao Patao raised his hand. Wait a minute. Inluo frowned. What's wrong? We were talking business just now and didn't tell you immediately. Your action of rushing into the embassy alone was very risky. I understand that you want to do something for Sun Lang to show that you're not just a pretty face, but you have to think about how Sun Lang would feel if something happened to you. Chao Patao said seriously, I hope this is the last time. You can't take risks on your own, or I will forcibly take you away from the imperial capital. After all, even in the worst case, Sun Lang can fight his way out. Are we still going to get tangled up in this? Before Inluo could say anything, Courier said unhappily, Aquilo has received the most complete Holy Knight training in the theocracy. Her combat talent and piloting skills were unanimously praised by the Flame Priests. Her solar power armor is specially made, and with my support and cover, it's enough to deal with any unexpected situation. There's no need to protect her like a porcelain doll. Besides, we still have a seraph that hasn't been used yet. Chao Patao glared at her, his eyes as sharp as knives. Don't judge the situation with barbarian standards. This is the Empire. The enemies we face are not necessarily these brittle and thin tin cans and scary fireworks. Do you understand? Courier's tone also became colder. When this is over, I will let you experience for yourself whether my armor is brittle and thin, and whether my weapons are just scary fireworks. Arrogant imperial people. When will you wake up from the arrogance of the imperial army? At this moment, talking about the imperial army was like adding fuel to the fire. Zhao Yunlong was infuriated. When he was about to fight back, Yin Luo stood between the two of them. Are we going to have an internal conflict first? General Zhao, I understand your kindness, but please don't underestimate me. In terms of martial arts, I am indeed far inferior to you, but with this armor and the seraph, my combat ability is not bad either. Whether the enemies are holy knights with fire-heavy equipment or warriors of the imperial army of Hutu, Courier, and I can deal with them easily, she said sincerely. Zhao Yunlong said with a dark face, what if there are other enemies? Yin Luo was stunned. Other enemies? Who else? Hardly had his voice faded away when a few shrieks echoed outside the window, as if a few things were approaching quickly. Watch out! With Zhao Yunlong's shout, a heavy object smashed through the window, smashed through the wall, and charged into the vast ambassador's office, smashing the exotic furniture and decorations to pieces. A loud mechanical roar filled the entire room. Zhao Yunlong and Lu Shujin pressed their palms down at the same time. Stellar energy spread out, dispelling the dust and revealing everything in the room. 3 large metal eggs had been smashed on the ground, and the sound of metal colliding rang out. These metal objects stood up with 2 legs, and then their bodies began to crack and deform. They had a pointed head with a searchlight on it, a torso made up of large and small gears, and 4 slender and flexible arms. There were also 4 sharp sabers that gleamed with a cold light. The rumbling sounds were endless, coming from the surrounding walls. Everyone looked up and saw 5 steel wheels moving around on the walls and on the dome. The steel wheels were formed by countless steel rings and sharp teeth, and they were driven by a mysterious power. The core of the wheels was sputtering with friction, and a few iron whips with barbs extended out. This was a monster made purely of machinery, and it emitted a sense of terror that made people shudder. Clockwork guard, blade reverse wheel, Yin Luo was stunned. These are all weapons of the country of acute gene. How did they appear? Zhao Yunlong held a spear in her hand and looked around vigilantly. She said calmly, I don't think the country of acute gene found out that the Li Hua embassy was attacked and extended a helping hand in accordance with the principle of international cooperation. Things are obviously worse. We obviously have to deal with a second country's assault force. But there's also good news. She suddenly leapt up, her spear like a dragon, and thrust it at one of the reverse wheels in the ceiling. That's our source of information. There's another one. Do it. Chapter 1184. The battle suddenly broke out. The killing machines of the country of metal immediately activated. 5 long whips with barb hooks shot out like spider webs, aiming for Zhao Yunlong's head. At the same time, the 3 clockwork wardens swung their 4 arms at Zhao Yunlong's head with a total of 12 long blades. A sonorous sound rang out. In midair, Zhao Yunlong thrust out her spear and struck the weak point of the whip. Immediately, the whip lost its strength like a snake that had been struck by a needle, becoming crooked and twisted. In the time it took for a spark to fly off a flint, she retracted her spear and stabbed again. This time, the spear injected new strength into the whip. Of course, this time it was her will. The whip suddenly shook and then swept in the opposite direction at an extremely twisted angle. There was a series of crackling sounds, and sparks burst out. The steel whip touched the other dancing whips with a force that could drive a person with OCD to death. They were entangled with each other, and it was even messier than a ball of earphone wires. The blades turned around and rotated in different directions. The rotating discs accelerated, and the internal gears rotated continuously. They adjusted their angles and tried to get out of this embarrassing situation. However, Zhao Yunlong's third stab was already coming. This stab hit the spot where the whips were tangled. An indescribable, surging force was released by the delicate and subtle force. The force was transmitted, and the blades trembled together. The magical and exquisite mechanical system stopped working for a moment. At this moment, Zhao Yunlong twisted her waist in the air and swung her spear. Using the connection of the whips, the 5 blades were all thrown into the air. Being in the air meant that there was no way to borrow force. Especially for these machines that relied on friction to gain mobility, it was a fatal moment. Zhao Yunlong shook her spear. 5 cold stars flashed, like snowflakes melting in flames. It was only a total of 8 stabs. Even though the sharp metal weapons were unparalleled in the world, the cold killing machines were still lifeless objects without emotions or brains. When it came to actual combat, how could they be a match for the warriors who had experienced hundreds of battles? Bang, 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 bang. 5 consecutive explosions rang out in the air. Broken gears and metal rings fell in all directions. In this rain of metal, Zhang Yinluo and Courier opened fire at the same time. Under the precise and rapid rain of bullets, the 12 long swords were first broken, followed by the weak joints of the mechanical lower limbs, and then the arms. A purple shadow flashed, and the head, which was the strongest part, was penetrated by Lu Shujin's sword energy. Zhao Yunlong landed on the ground. Lu Shujin got up. Yinluo and Courier put away their guns. Although they easily defeated the powerful weapons of the country of metal, everyone's expression was very serious. We shouldn't stay here for long, Zhao Yunlong said concisely. Let's go first. As soon as he said that, the roar of the blade reverser came from outside the window again. This time, the killing machines didn't jump directly into the room. Instead, they rushed downstairs. In the midst of an earthquake, Courier shouted, "Those guys are destroying the load-bearing structure of the building." Zhao Yunlong swung his spear and threw the upper body of a clockwork warrior into the wall. A large hole appeared in the wall that had been mostly destroyed. "Let's go." Yinluo activated the propulsion system and jumped out of the room. Lu Shujin and Zhao Yunlong followed. Courier had already jumped into the air. She had the best mobility. The moment they rushed out of the building, the load-bearing structure of the embassy was completely destroyed by the blade reverser. Dust flew everywhere, and the majestic building collapsed. Yinluo landed steadily on the ground with the cushioning system of the mech. She immediately heard screams and screams. Turning around, she saw the captives of the Leaf Fire military officers being massacred by the country of metal's killing machines. There was no need to mention the 4 blades of the clockwork warriors. The real nightmare was the blade reversers. They only needed to reach out with a hook, and the powerful force of the blade reversers could tear apart a fragile human body. Yinluo raised her hand and fired 2 shots at the core, destroying a blade reverser that was charging like a ghost. She shouted, "Get your weapons back immediately. Cover each other and defend yourselves. Hurry." Zhao Yunlong frowned. "You still want to care about them? They're obviously trying to silence us. If they're all killed, we'll have to bear the crime of attacking the embassy and slaughtering the envoys." Yinluo said anxiously, "I know you don't care about that, but in the current situation, the embassy being massacred will be a valid reason to declare war. The Empire is in such a difficult situation. We can't let go of any small chance to improve the situation." Courier had already swooped down from the sky and fired at the sharp metal weapons. Zhao Yunlong pondered for a moment and said, "Lu Shujin, you're responsible for protecting her." Master Lu nodded. "Okay, so what's the plan now?" Chao Patao turned his spear and faced a new batch of sharp metal weapons. "Reorganize our forces and wait for them to come." Judging by the aggressive momentum of the country of metal, Makarov must have run over there. If he wants to silence us, he will definitely come for us. Let's fight. Zhang Yinluo looked around. The surviving military officers used the cover of the flank attacks as cover and scrambled to retrieve their weapons. The Russians were, after all, old Russians. With firearms in hand, there were many times more courageous. They cursed as they madly poured bullets at the sharp metal weapons. "Stay close to me." Inluo fired twice into the sky. The loudspeaker on the power suit spread her voice far away. "Mobile fire. With the seraph covering us from the sky, we need to complete the reorganization and establish a line of defense." In this moment of heavy casualties, everyone's IQ plummeted. Animal instincts began to take over the body. Obeying the authority and following the masses became the most mainstream thinking. The Leaf Fire soldiers were at a loss at first, but then they recognized this judge. The prestige and reputation of the Inquisition had become the most trustworthy golden signboard at this moment. They cheered as they approached, as if this was not the Inquisition that they usually feared, but the legendary, invincible, and respected Sun Warrior. Remember the Divine Emperor's teachings. Silently recite the creed of the order. Inluo could even imitate the tone of the ascetics perfectly. The Leaf Fire soldiers felt very close to her. They felt as if they had returned to the monastery where they received their training when they were young. They remembered the stern scolding and the heavy whip of the ascetics. These memories were like the strongest liquor, making them feel the real burning pain, intoxicating them, and making them unable to control themselves. These Leaf Fire soldiers began to roar wildly. Inluo was still adding fuel to the fire. Waving the roaring flame axe in his left hand and holding the gun in his right hand, he roared a shocking slogan. "Live in the face of death. Never stop fighting. Slayer, Slayer, Slayer." Lu Shujin protected Inluo by his side. Her ears were full of gunshots and howls. She felt as if she had come to another world. She felt that she did not fit in with the surroundings. But Inluo, who was also a citizen of the Empire, seemed to be very compatible with these Russians. God knows what this guy was shouting. As the line of defense was consolidated, under the command of Inluo, the remaining Leaf Fire soldiers had already organized the line of defense. Zhao Yunlong was moving in and out of the field, and Courier was suppressing back and forth in the air. Almost all the sharp metal weapons in the battle had been suppressed. Broken wreckage was everywhere. Just as everyone was relieved, Courier descended from the sky. A large number of power suits are coming this way, and night-level, self-propelled heavy weapons. A few big guys from the sharp metal embassy also came out. Inluo asked, "Is that all the sharp metal embassy has?" Courier quickly said, "Their engineers are capable enough to transport a few Vanguard Titans. After all, this is the capital of the Hutu Empire. They can't go too far. In terms of small enemies, the sharp metal country is most proud of their combat-type, smart machines that can almost pass off as real ones. But we have Zhao Yunlong here. They're just asking to be humiliated." Inluo was silent for a moment. Then he asked again, "Greenwood and Blackwater? Nothing unusual?" Courier said indifferently, "No. The two embassies just sealed the gate, recalled non-combatants, and entered the highest alert state. This is good news. The circus of the Dragon Sparrow dynasty is fine, but the arcana of the Blackwater country is particularly troublesome. Without their participation, our pressure will be much less." She asked again, "So what should we do now?" Inluo shouted, "General Zhao." A white figure flashed, and the iron spear stabbed forward. Zhao Yunlong rushed over. "What's the matter?" Inluo explained the situation. Chao Patao said decisively, "We will lose if we keep defending. Besides, Li Hua has brought heavy weapons, and this is the Sea Embassy. The enemy is more familiar with the terrain than we are. We have to go." Lu Shujin asked, "Where to?" "Anywhere." Zhao Yunlong sneered. "Do you really think the Empire is dead?" Although the officials of the various departments are at a loss, that's only because they don't know how to deal with the current situation. But now, the foreign army is rampaging in the capital. If they don't know what to do, this country will simply be destroyed. Inluo nodded and then shouted, "Everyone, listen to my order. Prepare to retreat. The great traitor Makarov has brought his evil minions to silence us. We can't just sit around and wait for death. We will temporarily withdraw from here and fight with this evil heretic. We must make him suffer the punishment of the flames." The Russians wailed like ghosts and howled like wolves. Then, they quickly packed up their weapons and ammunition and prepared to retreat. Zhao Yunlong looked at this scene with a subtle expression on his face. Was she this popular when she was in Lihua? She asked Courier. Much more popular than this, Courier said unhappily. Not to mention these ordinary Lihua military officials. Even, I'm leaving first. The blazing angel quickly rose into the air. Everyone also quickly retreated through the side door of the embassy. Not long after, fierce artillery bombardment suddenly came, causing the ground to shake. Good explosion. Zhao Yunlong looked back at the soaring air column and sneered. With such a commotion, the cavalry of the 5 cities warden's office will arrive soon. Before he finished speaking, Courier rushed down again. Another large group of people is coming. Chow Patao said in surprise. The efficiency of the 5 cities warden's office has increased. Are you talking about your city defense force? Courier shook his head. I don't think so, because the commander of that force is clearly Crown Prince Li Jiansheng. And after he saw me, he was very angry. They looked at each other. Chow Patao slapped his head. This idiot. Did he think that if the Lihua embassy people kidnapped that woman, he wouldn't send people to Tensei province to inquire about it? Lu Shujian said, they don't have good intentions. We should avoid them. And now, in the imperial capital, the most convenient force to borrow is Tensei province. Let's let Empress deal with these people. Let's go to Tensei province. No, we can't. Zhao Yunlong thought for a moment and shook his head. This is a serious matter. Both Ruijin and Li Hua are involved in this chaos. We should capture Makarov as soon as possible and interrogate him for the information we want. If we go to Tensei province now, it will take too long, and there will be too many variables, Lu Shujin frowned. But we don't have enough manpower. It's too difficult to deal with both Li Jiansheng and Makarov's forces at the same time. Yin Luo, who had been silent all this time, suddenly raised her hand and said, About this problem, I think I have a bold idea. Everyone looked at her. Although Yin Luo was wearing a power armor, she still looked shy. 2 teams, Makarov and Li Jiansheng. Makarov wants to kill us, and Li Jiansheng wants to settle the score with Li Hua. They don't know who we are, and they don't know each other's background, so she whispered, why don't we lure them? Let them run into each other and kill each other. They were still staring at her. Yin Luo said uneasily, what? Did I say something wrong? Lu Shujin shook her head. No, it's just, Zhao Yunlong said, this method is familiar. Sun Lang's teaching is good. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.